Well,
WROK on
I
YouTube.
have the privilege
And never miss a
and the
meeting.
duty. Call to order, May 25th, 2022, Royal Oak special meeting to order to discuss the budget for this upcoming year. We'll just do a quick roll call, I guess, since it's on the agenda. We'll start with Commissioner Prush.
I'm here, kind of.
Commissioner Macy.
Here.
I'm here, and Commissioner Hunt's here, and we have Commissioner Colo and Commissioner Dubuck that will be arriving. There's some family logistics to manage, and then Commissioner Douglas is out of country at the moment. So, all righty. We have item number 3, which is the approval of the agenda. Does anyone wish to make a motion to approve the agenda? We have a motion by Commissioner Hunt. Do we have a second? I have a second by Commissioner Macy. Discussion on the approval of the agenda. All right, with that, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. All right, that brings us to public comment. See, we have a member of the public here tonight. The City Commission values and relies on the input of our fellow citizens to make decisions. Now's the time set aside for the public to address the City Commission on any city-related issues, both on the agenda and not. As there are no public hearings scheduled for tonight's meeting, this will be the only time for the public to address the City Commission. I ask that comments be directed to the City Commission and not to individual commissioners. If you wish to speak tonight at public comment, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized by myself, Mayor Fournier. For the record, you will state your name and address. Please be mindful, City Commission wants to hear from everyone who wishes to speak. Comments are limited to 3 minutes or less per speaker, not per topic. There's a timer at the podium to help you keep track of your allotted time. Please note the City Commission will not respond directly to questions during public comment. However, we're taking notes and we'll address the questions when the agenda topic is discussed. Refer it to proper city department if its matter is not scheduled on the agenda. Staff is also taking notes and will look into matters as needed. All right, who's up? Come on up.
I'm only going to address a couple items that are on the line items that are in the budget. One item I definitely agree with is the addition of a fire department position so the ambulance at the Rochester Road station is staffed. The idea that people serviced by that station are required to wait for service from one of the other 2 stations is and has been a gross disservice to the community. One item I definitely don't agree with is the spending of $65,000 for outdoor fitness equipment at the senior center. Save that money and put it towards an indoor fitness center where it can be used year-round. If you want to decrease your contributions to the senior center, you need to add more features that will actually increase its usage. Further, from an overall perspective, I'm struck by what appears to be an unawareness of items in the news, such as, from the May 19th edition of the Wall Street Journal, CEOs say they are bracing for a recession. Even as the economy remains strong, the Wells Fargo CEO said there was no question that the U.S. is headed for an economic downturn. From the March 8th, 2021 City Commission meeting, Jim Ellison stated, "We all know we're going to be coming out of this pandemic and there's another crash coming." And the mayor was seen nodding in agreement. From this budget, the projected forecast shows a continued use of fund balance between $4 and $6 million annually, and fund balance going into a negative position, commonly referred to as a structural deficit in numerous previous budget documents. From the city manager's transmittal letter, financial projection in the general fund into future years will make budget decisions increasingly difficult. The city will be evaluating various resolutions for balancing the budget in future years. In other words, more fees and more millages. Given that last statement, it appears you haven't considered how the tax-paying residents have been affected. We, most of us, are being hit by inflation, and we are already rethinking our spending and delaying our purchases. We are concerned about our 401ks and our retirement savings accounts. We are concerned that a recession may result in job losses, as well as another downturn in the value of our homes. In other words, we are doing what you are proposing not doing in this document, spending as though nothing is happening. Bottom line, as you're evaluating this budget, I want you to keep all of this in mind and consider your spending of our money. If some of these predictions do not come to pass, you can always amend the budget and add some of these items during the year. In the meantime, you should be tightening the city's purse strings until you are certain what is happening in the economy. Thank you. And I'm awaiting email response from City Attorney Leo on Monday's meeting.
And we welcome Commissioner DuBuck. All right, we got pretty much the full crew now. We got Commissioner Colo. All right. So we'll continue where we kind of left off, or at least with the rest of the budget. We'll go with item number 5 now, which is the special revenue funds.
Oh, don't go.
Good evening, Commissioners. Of course. Start with the major streets funds on page 180. They're a little bit out of order, but I think it makes a little bit of better sense to start with the...
Ms. Rudd, you said 180?
Page 180.
Okay, good, sorry.
Yes. We're using the State of Michigan revised distribution formula for the Act 51 revenues, and they are estimating that next year the city will receive for its major streets $5,661,000. That's a $204,000 increase. The only other significant note we have for this fund in the revenue area is that the road millage or the street millage is all budgeted to go into the local street fund. So 0 is going into the major street fund. And I'll show you the fund summary in a couple slides, and you'll see why. And that has been the case for the first 8 years of the millage. On page 172, so going
Can I
back.
ask a quick question? So, in the major street funds, it looks like we're taking $3 million out of fund balance. I think this question is really for Mr. Brake. Why, when we have the ARPA money, are we choosing to take it out of the fund balance instead of, I saw the ARPA money, we have $4 million that's left for regular government operations that is left unspent at the moment. I'm just wondering why that choice was made when, I don't know if it was in this one or another one, but they talk about how we're going to be in a negative position if we keep spending the fund balance this way, and at this point we don't need to.
2 simple answers. Number 1, ARPA cannot be used on roads.
Okay.
Issue number 2 is that the number of projects through economies of scale and like what the city engineer is proposing is that we complete these in the upcoming year. So that's why we're proposing to draw down the fund balance, but with the anticipation that we will be building that back up.
Okay, I just want clarification. So I thought there was $12 million of the ARPA funds that could be used on any of our funds. Is that not true?
They can. It's a matter of backfilling through revenue loss, and so if you wish to designate it that way, then but just to clarify, if it's a grant eligible, that the funds are not intended for roads. But if we take that out of the revenue replacement, then yes, it could be allocated.
Okay, it feels to me like we have this big pot of money that is especially designed to fill any holes in our budget this year, and yet we're still pulling quite a bit from fund balance. And I guess I'm just wondering what the policy decision around that was.
So that's a recommendation that I'm making, that at least the initial allocation, but if you wish to draw on that, then we'll make adjustments to include that.
Okay, so I get that, but I'm just wondering why you made. I'm hearing your recommendation, but what made you make that recommendation? It feels like you must be saving that other money for something. Like in the description, you said, "Here's what I recommend for government operations." There's $4 million left, and then instead of allocating it this way. So I'm just asking what the thought process was.
Mr. Brake, if I may interject,
Yeah.
what I hear you saying is we have to have a place for it, but if we decide through the ARPA process, then this fund would be adjusted. But right now,
Sure.
this is where the amounts are coming out because this is what we know where it can come out. But if we go through the ARPA assignment and we say, okay, well, let's put it towards this, or we can put it towards it, then it would come out of the it would be a revenue item, a budget amendment where the revenue item would increase by the ARPA amount, correct, Ms. Rudd? If that were an eligible?
Yeah, that is correct. So,
Yes.
so as I described in my presentation on Monday, I said that we're going to go through the ARPA process concurrently, but we'll be adopting the budget prior to allocating these funds. So I fully anticipate that we're going to be amending the upcoming budget depending on what projects are approved out of the ARPA program.
Okay.
Commissioner Fellow?
So just so I can be clear on this, no ARPA funds are being allocated. That 12 million of discretionary spending that we essentially have, that's not being allocated anywhere else in this budget, correct?
Well, I've identified it in two places. So in the general fund, there's $4 million. And then there is 1.3 that's for the water line extension and the Stevenson Highway project.
And then the administration for the guidehouse. But that's not really a project. But
Yeah, but
There's
as far as
some
operating
administration
budgets, that initially, that's what I proposed as part of the budget.
Okay, so of the 12 million that we have discretionary spending of, you've only allocated 4 million so far, so that leaves us with another 8 million left? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, 5.3. Yeah, so I said 4 million out of to the general fund,
Uh-huh.
1.3 into the water fund. for the
So
Stevenson Highway
I'm sorry,
project.
so that water fund, that 1.3 is not, because ARPA has, we have 28 million, but, so that 1.3 is not tied to one of the buckets that we can spend it in. That 1.3 isn't, that's out of the 12 million that we have?
That is an ARPA eligible expense. So water lines are, and so we've looked at this in view of not passing along that cost to the ratepayers, and so
Yeah.
that was the reason why.
Okay, so I guess I may now be more confused than I was before. We have $12 million that we can spend how, it can go into our general fund, we
Correct.
can spend that however we want.
Correct.
I'm hearing that 4 million is going into the general fund for other expenditures, correct?
Yes.
That 1.3, is that tied to something or is that part of the 12 million?
That is an ARPA eligible, so that comes out of the portion that we can allocate that specifically tie that back to ARPA.
So it's 8 million left.
So,
Okay, so there is 8 million left, as Commissioner Macy is asking, for filling these gaps. We could potentially use $8 million to fill a gap here if
Correct.
that's the direction we take in the
Correct.
future.
Or if the projects are eligible.
right, yeah.
Okay, that's it. I just want to be clear about
Yeah,
that.
okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dubak?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Rick, do we have any insight as to the infrastructure bill funding, how that's going to be distributed, timing on that, and whether or not it'll be able to backfill any of these expenses?
As we are able to apply for projects, we certainly submit them. The way that this works is that through direct appropriations, we've submitted an application to Congressman Levin's office, and I indicated to you this preliminary funding proposal that's been approved, and we also submitted proposals to Senator Peters' office as well. So as these programs become available, then we submit the projects, and these are items that we can remove off of the ARPA list.
And my understanding, the applications you're talking about were for congressional directed
That is
spending.
correct, the direct appropriation.
Yeah. What I'm wondering about is the infrastructure bill that was passed last year, that the dollar's still been appropriated. Is that still going to be on an application basis, or is that going to be distributed through a formula like ARPA?
I will defer to the city engineer on that.
So my understanding is that most of those funds have already been handed out. And so the way we get that money is through our Federal Aid Committee application process. And I checked with SEMCOG at our last FAC meeting, and they're like, nope, it's out there already. The project's already programmed. So I think we got a piece of it for Rochester Road.
Okay.
And potentially Crooks. But like, there's no major windfall coming where we're going to get $5 million to do a few roads. Like, that's not going to happen.
Okay. So that's going to be through those different mechanisms that already exist to get the dollars
Yeah,
out there.
which are highly competitive, and it's really hard for us. Like, we've done the roads that we can be competitive with. We're running out of roads that we would qualify and be up there for.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Commissioner Pruish?
In the narrative here, it says that you intend to put all the road millage revenue into the local street fund. But yet when there were earlier discussions the other night about the millage for the roads, the intent was to take a lot of that money and put it towards some major street projects because there's a whole lot of major streets that need improvement, and we could put the money in that direction. So this kind of seems contradictory. Is this just for this budget year? It's all going to go into the local street fund?
Correct.
Okay, so later on, if the millage passes, we can put it in whatever fund we think is appropriate?
Yeah, and the forecast really extrapolates on the current budget that we're talking about. So since it's going into local roads for 22, 23, or proposed to, and so that's what the forecast looks like. So it shows you if we continue to deposit all of the millage money into the local roads, that's what the forecast looks like. So it doesn't have to go that way.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thanks.
Commissioner DeBuck?
Sorry, one more thing. I know we've talked about trying to offset the cost of the sidewalk program with this millage as opposed to doing the special assessments. I think we've landed on doing that with the next round. I just want a little bit more understanding of why we decided that we couldn't do that with this round. I know we've already done 1 year. We could feasibly reimburse those that we have assessed. That might be logistically complicated, but I'm wondering what other thinking has gone into that? Would you like some?
So, yes, when we first discussed it, it was like a great idea, we should go after that, and then I went back to my office, and this new millage renewal takes effect in 2025. So by then, we'll have done 4 of the 6, did I say that right? 4 of the 6 years of the sidewalk program. So we'd have to refund 4 years of program, and then do the last 2 with the millage, which we could decide to do, but that's a long ways, and then I don't know what all the logistical complications are with that when people move, or how you find them, how you pay them back, I don't know.
Right, and I think that's an important thing, that it's going to be up this November, right, but it's not till 2025 that we're actually levying that millage. And
Correct.
I feel like that's something we're going to have to make sure people are really clear about. If the timing would have worked out, it would have been great, but I think next cycle is still going to be a benefit to folks. And that's still our intent, is the next time it rolls around,
Yes,
we're going to try and absorb all the cost of the sidewalk replacement program.
yes.
All right, thanks.
Anybody else? All right.
I just want to make a response to Commissioner Macy's concern about using fund balance. In the major street fund, it's very common where there's some significant savings over the years, like saving up for a big project that they see, coming down like a $5 million project or whatever. And so it's not as concerning when we see like a $3 million use of fund balance, because like we just saved 1.2 the prior year because we're saving up for the big project. So it's very common for use or savings in fund balance and in this particular fund to significantly vary from year to year. So.
Yeah, that's helpful. And I thought about that when I was looking at some of the past use of fund balance, because I know that we had saved up quite a bit, and it sort of, thank you, it in fact makes our numbers look a little bit wonky over the past, because we had a really high percentage fund balance as relative to expenditures for a couple of years there while we were doing that savings. So I get that there's an ebb and flow to it, but also these years when, especially with the ARPA money, we're going to be expending quite a lot, to be getting rid of some of the fund balance money is going to make that, you understand what I'm saying, like make that gap even more stark, right? Like, oh my gosh, we have so much expenditures and our fund balance is shrinking, and it makes it appear as if we are quickly declining when maybe that might not be the case.
More discussion? Commissioner Colo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we leave major street funds, I just want to draw everyone's attention to page 182. And I apologize, I'm not sure if we'll get to it on this slide, but this really nicely, this orange box lays out a really nice roadmap to how the money is going to be spent. This is the only fund, these funds, the street funds are the only funds where we see that other category we see completely laid out for us here. As a policymaker, I find that extremely beneficial. We see how the money we're putting towards programming. So moving forward in the future, I hope that this is what all the others are laid out, so we really see how we're spending the money. So I appreciate this fund for doing that. Thank you.
We do lay this out for capital in each of the funds.
Right. Because you know what the projects are.
For the capital projects, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, just really one item, I have a noteworthy comment. Here on page 172 in the document, in the operating budget, there's about 5 cost centers, by the way, in the Major Street Fund. And really, for next year, it's business as usual. There is one exception here, a request for $30,000 in contracted services for some routine rain garden and bioswale maintenance.
I do have something to say.
Commissioner Mason?
Sorry. I guess I wish Mr. Flipsky were here because there's 30,000 here, then there's 70,000 somewhere else for bioswales, and then there's another 12,000 for a bioswale burn. And it seems like all of a sudden these are extraordinarily expensive bioswales. And I was just wondering if anybody had any feedback on why our bioswales, which I was sort of hoping would be somewhat self-maintaining after the first few years, are costing over $100,000.
Page 186 specifically has the 77.
I have a question. I have an answer.
Oh, okay. Oh, good.
And Commissioner Cruz.
Well, I think I have a partial answer, and Aaron's not here to tell me whether or not I'm right or wrong. But I routinely drive down Vincetta by the bioswale that is between Main Street and, well, Crooks, but it's much, much closer to Main Street. It's probably as long as this room is long, maybe a little bit shorter. And it's deep, it's relatively deep. It is full of plants and mulch and rocks and other stuff. And when you see it over the course of a season, and then when you watch them do the cleanup, which they just did the last couple of weeks, it's a huge effort. It's a huge effort. The amount of weeds and everything that grow and the junk that gets in there over the winter that has to be cleaned out, and plants have to kind of be rearranged, some of them, or cut back or whatever. Worry Free does it, at least under contract now, and I think they were there with a crew of like maybe 6 people for like 2 days, and that's just one bioswale in Vincetta, and I don't know, we have others, obviously. So it's a major work project to maintain those. They're huge and they're deep, and it's just a lot of work. That's my impression. So I don't think the expenditure for contracted service for maintenance is at all unreasonable.
And then I have a totally unrelated thought.
Unrelated thought?
Totally
Okay.
related. A lot of the vehicle depreciation seems to be increasing like across these cost centers, and I was just wondering, I sort of had the impression that depreciation was something that was fairly steady over time, and that's the whole point of it really, is to make sure that we are accounting for those year for year. Why are so many of them increasing this year?
There's a 1-year lag, and we reinstated the catch-up program in 21-22, and there's a lag. There's a 1-year lag.
Oh,
So if you recall the catch-up program, we believe that we were short about $4 million in the motor pool, and we were going to break that up over 10 years and do about $408,000 a year for 10 years to recover the depreciation vacation that
right, okay.
was taken many, many years ago. And in order to have that replacement money, in order to replace equipment and fire trucks as they came up rather than to bond for them. And so that's why there's the big increase. Because
Okay.
we took a 1-year vacation because of COVID
Okay,
on the catch-up, so.
gotcha. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, then page 182 has a list of the capital projects. There's over $6.7 million in Major Street projects. I won't go through them all, but and then, as we talked about just a little bit earlier, we're requesting to use $3 million, just over $3 million of fund balance from this fund. Beginning in 25-26, the capital improvement project budget may need to be reduced or pushed out, or maybe some bonding in order to complete all the work that's in the CIP, or maybe the CIP is adjusted. It does get adjusted quite frequently. Because you see right here, the $3.7 million will cause a negative fund balance. So in the next couple of years, kind of keep an eye on that. And of course, if there's an ability to move some of the millage over, but you'll see tonight, we're kind of in the same situation when we get to local streets. So there's an ability to push out projects, that's possible. Then we might need to do that.
The millage fails, you push out projects, you adjust like we did in years past, which led to the problem that we endured in years past. Or if it passes, you then know that the voters say, okay, yep, we want to continue the program and keep our roads in good shape and increase them on the PACER scale and do all the repairs and capital improvements necessary, and that hits the top line and that deficit goes away. All right. Commissioner Macy.
So you did say, I think a few minutes ago, that in 2025, when the new millage comes, you think that there will be more of a transfer to major streets. I think that was what Commissioner Perush was asking, right? I mean, I understand you're saying they're both major street and local streets are going to look like this chart, but did I understand correctly that the major street is going to maybe look different once we have that new millage, because we're expecting more of that to be spent on major streets?
It could, if you reroute it to this fund. Right now, this shows here that this is only Act 51 going into this fund in the forecast. So yeah,
Okay.
You'd have to divert some of that millage over from local to major.
But that is what Ms. Donahue is has in her mind, right? Is that what you said?
Yes, that's the game plan, and just once we kind of saw these projections, we approached the DDA to see, we've been funding all the downtown signals. We had too much fund balance last year, right? So we're like, let's fund some more projects. So now it's too aggressive, so we're like, could you pony up a little bit to help out? So I'm hoping that will help offset some of these numbers as well.
Good idea.
These CIP projects do get updated every year. Like Ms. Donahue was saying, last year, the major street fund looked great. There was so much money. So, the CIP gets tweaked and some other projects get moved around and it looks like this. So it's very common for big swings in this fund as updates come through on the timing of projects and things.
Okay.
Okay, page 192 is the local street fund. And using the state of Michigan's distribution formula for local streets, we're budgeting $1,887,000. That's a $68,000 increase from the current fiscal year. Also on page 192 is that forecast. The maximum authorized levy we talked about Monday night is 2.3026 mils, and that's proposed to be levied. That'll generate $7,157,000, and that's approximately $327,000 increase from 21-22. And then there's a request to use $3.5 million of fund balance. And if you look here, there's a surge again in capital projects for 23-24, and there's a decent amount here in the next year, 24-25. So you see these negative ending fund balances for a few years, but then you see it go back into the block. So again, there's some options there. You can push some projects out, or you could bond. I don't know if I really recommend that. It depends how urgent the projects are. But it's just what we do is we take the CIP and those years in the CIP and we insert them here. So that's the desire. It doesn't mean we can't work around some of the timing of the projects. So.
Sure.
Mr. Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Brick, have you ever thought about presenting, when looking at this, instead of numbers that go into the red, is there any recommendation for adjusting the CIP so that we're pushing these out, so that we're not looking at a budget in a deficit position, but a plan of action that would show us, one, if you proceed along this route and you don't change anything, you go to deficit, here are some changes you can make. Is that a strategy you've implemented in the past?
Not specifically, but, we can get into those scenarios in the upcoming budget processes. In looking at, and specifically, and go back to the comment that Ms. Rudd made on these road funds, that with the ebbs and flows, and so that we project that out. That is something that we need to take a close eye on into future years, but also realize that the projects that engineering is trying to get done, there are some years, because we've saved up in order to, through, it's better, but through, as I mentioned before, economies of scale, that you can do several projects at the same time. So,
And just to be clear, I mean, we're talking about this because it's engineering right now, but I'm just even looking at the general fund balance. Let's not talk about engineering as an example, but even in the general fund, there's, do you ever look at ways to make recommendations of what we should push to keep this in a black position?
I look at things from like a 2 to 3 year perspective, and that's the discussion that I got into at the presentation that I did Monday night, looking at how can we adjust, where are there opportunities where we can look at programs that could be self-contained within a millage program.
Yep.
And so to make that adjustment immediately, it's, what you're talking about, we're a human enterprise, and so if we're going to make that large of a swing immediately, then we have to look at reduction of personnel costs.
Yeah, I mean, we could look at reduction of services also, and personnel, but I just, for me, it'd be beneficial if we saw an alternate also as to, okay, if we proceed down the same path, here's one option, here's some recommendations to make up this $5 million, $4 million, $200,000 shortfall. I think that could be beneficial in the future.
Okay, all right, duly noted.
Commissioner Perush?
Thank you.
Just as a follow-up comment though, I remember every single budget that I've ever had in front of me, and this goes back to the Don Johnson years, had a structural deficit built into it. And Don started doing that when he was finance director way back in the 90s. And the way he explained it was, I do it so that you understand that if you continue the exact same path that you are on today, this is what's going to happen. But it never, of course, ends up in the red. Never. Because we always make adjustments before we get to that point. So what it is a snapshot picture of if things stay exactly the same, this is what's going to happen. But it never does, because we're always making adjustments. I'm not so sure that we could project enough out, given that there are so many hundreds of different variables, a way to show that, in 2027 it's in the black, because there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of variables that go into the whole budget that impact this. So, I mean, you could, kind of imagine now, okay, this is one way we could do it so that it ends up in the black, but I don't know how realistic that would be, because everything just changes so much over from one year to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. So, I know people love to come up to the podium and say, oh, structural deficit, you're going to end up in the red. But what we keep saying over and over and over and over again is we never let it get that bad. We always fix it before it gets to that point, because we know it's a train wreck down the road if we don't. But we always fix it. So, just, quit yammering about it, because it's not a realistic criticism. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Anybody else? Okay.
Okay, and then the only other comment on this slide is this assumes a straight renewal. Okay, not any sort of Headley override.
Okay.
Okay, and I think the only operating cost significant note there is here's the $77,000 for local roads, rain garden maintenance, and Craig Waite, tree replacement and restoration programs. And that's on page 186. Okay, then, page 194 has the list of the various local street construction budgets, totaling nearly $8.2 million.
Quick question. I think this is for Ms. Donahue. What is the 1 million sidewalk improvement? Is that for like city sidewalks?
No, that's what we budget as a total cost for the sidewalk program, and then we
And then
we
we get it
bill
back.
it.
Okay.
I'm not sure how that fits into the budget.
I'm just,
That's what that 1
don't
million
worry
is
about that
for.
part. That's what I was trying to figure out. Thank you.
We get reimbursed for it from payments from property owners. So we expense it because we top line it too. Got it.
It's not
Maybe
revenue.
10% might be ours, something like that. Okay, if there's no other questions on local streets, solid waste fund is next.
Anyway, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, just to follow up on that, where's that revenue realized back in the budget then? Because I see the expenditures, that's local street construction fund. I see the expenditures on 195, where's the revenue on that?
Is it 193?
That's administration.
Yeah.
If you go to local streets, you look at the budget, beginning from the revenues and transfers from other funds. It probably transfers from other funds, goes to the general fund as a payment and then transfer in as part of that 9.1.
Yeah, we don't see it for about a year. So that's, if you look at the, if you can see the cursor moving,
Uh-huh.
that's right here in 23, 24. There's a delay in billing. Yeah, we assume most people on sidewalks, they actually pay and don't go under the special assessment program. There are some maybe corner lots that have really large bills that will go on. So there's probably, if I had to guess, I didn't see the specific list of sidewalks, but you know, from the first 10-year program that we had, maybe 50,000 will go on the special assessment program, and then the balance will actually pay because they'll have $300 or $400 invoice or something. So, but there is about a year delay
Okay.
for that.
So does everything go into the local street fund administration and then get paid out to all the local street fund accounts? Is that how that works?
If the program, this has kind of gone back and forth throughout the years. If that particular sidewalk program for that year is mostly in the neighborhoods, we've put it in local streets.
Okay.
We've had some along Main Street where more of the work was on Main Street, and we put it in major streets. But typically, it's in the neighborhoods,
Sure.
so it's come out of the local.
Just in general, if there's money going into the local street funds, any of the funds, not in sidewalks, but whatever, does it all start in the administration fund and then get transferred between the construction, that and the construction fund?
No, there's only one pot for revenue. So
Okay.
all the
Okay,
other
there's
cost
one pot.
centers are just expenditures.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to move on. Solid waste is next on page 214. It's a bit of a jump because we covered public safety on Monday night. The maximum authorized combined millage, that's the state levy and the city charter levy, max allowable is 2.7748 mils. However, it's recommended that we temporarily levy a lower rate of 2.3571, which is 0.4177 lower than what we could. Use of fund balance in the amount of $1,150,000 allows for this temporary reduction in the millage rate. Each year, the forecast illustrates the reduced tax revenue due to not levying the full authorized local voted millage and using fund balance as a revenue source, because currently there is a higher fund balance It was higher, it was intentionally higher for the CART program. They weren't sure what that cost was going to be, so that we were building up a fund balance for the recycling carts and the regular refuse carts. And so on page 215 shows the forecast with, this is the continued, if year after year it continues to be drastically lower than the maximum authorized amount. You see what eventually happens. So it's just demonstrating that it is temporary and it cannot go on forever. It will need to come up at some point in the next couple of years, or you can gradually bring it up.
But we're drawing down
Could
the
it
balance.
stabilize? Could it also just stabilize at what it's at?
Correct, but, you know, what is the fund balance for? You know, it was for the carts, and we accomplished the cart program, so.
Might need to replace them in 10 years. You never know. Mr. Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there is a program proposed in this part of the budget. I was wondering if anyone had any insight, Mr. Brake or Ms. Rod, on the miscellaneous operating expenses for refuse containers in city parks. While I'm very excited to have refuse containers, we're talking about the automatic ones that you see maybe at VFW Park or Star JC that alert GPS when it's full. Are these refuse containers like we have at our homes? Are these replacing those blue barrels I think were bought in the early 80s from a
50s, I think.
50? I believe it.
It is replacing those blue barrels.
Yeah. With what?
Mostly the bins we have at home, but some of the fancy ones.
Yeah, I presume like in the higher traffic parks, it'd be the fancy ones, and then like at the smaller parks, it would be the ones we have like at home. That'd be my presumption.
And it's
That
also-
seems like that'd be the smart play.
I think it's also for the like additional pickup, because it's a different type of pickup when it's not those barrels that are by the side of the road.
Right. You need a truck to do it. You can't just have like DPS show up with their trash truck and lift the barrels with their hands. They have to have a...
I see it every Wednesday in front of my house. I know exactly what it looks like. And then also, you know, have we ever thought about increasing services like a midsummer street cleaning? I think we do a phenomenal job on leaf clearing. We do 2 passes, sometimes 3 if we're lucky. A midsummer street cleaning or even an early spring street cleaning. I know some bikers have lamented about the fact that after the winter time, the bike lanes just get dirty. There's gravel, there's debris in the bike lanes. And we thought about cleaning those, and then potentially a tree clearing after a storm. We don't provide a chipping service. There seems to be enough money in this fund that we could potentially look at that in the future. So I guess, Mr. Brake, do you have any thoughts on that?
That I would have to check on. I'm making some notes, and we'll get back with you on that. But as far as storm cleanup, my knowledge is that when trees fall in the road right-of-way, that we are chipping them and clearing them. Or are you talking about trees on private properties?
I'll use Commissioner Perush as an example.
Yeah.
She just had a large tree fall in her, was it last year you had a storm or a tree fall in your backyard?
It was next door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't fall in the right-of-way, there's a very expensive cleanup cost, and those trees benefit us all. There's other communities around us that will send around a chipper, 15 minutes of chipping per house, depending on what it is.
For private property? On private property?
I would consult with your friends in Madison Heights, your colleagues in Madison Heights, because it's exactly what they do.
We'd have to look at that. So
Yeah.
I would say that you're looking at a pretty costly program.
Yeah, I mean, so
if we start
residents
doing
move
that.
it to the right-of-way, they move it to the street, but then they send around the apparatus to chip it in the
Yeah.
street.
Okay.
It's
And-
regular, it's not just like it's not like when it happens, I think they do it like weekly or
I'll
bi-weekly.
defer to our person works
I
expert.
guess, I'm not sure about this, but I understand that they do, it's like part of their regular services, like maybe once a month. You can put all the things that you want to have chipped to the curb, and then the chipper comes by.
okay,
gives-
all right.
They do, I think, 15 minutes per house of chipping, and then
Okay.
move along.
Yeah, we can check on it.
I think we also recognize we're much larger than some of
Yeah.
our neighboring
Yeah.
cities, and it's not feasible. There's an economy of scale, if we talk about a lot tonight. You can't do it every week, every cycle here, but we might be able to increase the service here.
Yeah, just kind of giving you an initial impression on that. I don't want to commit to something and say, oh yeah, we can do that when, there's not a staff capacity, so.
Commissioner Perush?
I don't know why I'm remembering that I think our own DPS offers that service for a fee.
Yeah.
Like you can call them up and say, look, I had this enormous tree come down, I can't chip it, could you chip it? And there's a flat fee. I don't know whether it's per hour or per volume, I don't know how it is, but it seems to me you can contract with our guys to do that if you've got
Yeah.
it. But I'm not sure if they still offer that.
Yeah, I think no, I think that, I mean, it's a challenge too. You get a couple things. One is, if you have a big tree, an issue like that, you usually have a lot of insurance that covers that. So most people should have homeowners insurance and a policy that addresses those situations. I think for your nominal, like a branch comes down, I think it's worth looking into, like to see, but I think that there should still be some sort of fee. Owning a home costs money, you know what I mean? But it shouldn't be, maybe it's subsidized or it's an on-call service if we don't already have it. The other issue I always wondered too is like, I had a branch come down and I honestly didn't know what to do with the bigger, I had to look it up. It's like they're not going to take the twigs. They'll take the twigs and they'll take the mulch and the bags and everything like that, but the bigger ones, it's always kind of like, what do I do with this stuff now? Commissioner Perush?
Yeah, I mean, that's the alternative too. When this big tree came down last year next door, it did throw a bunch of branches into our yard. But they were small enough so that with help of children and grandchildren, we could clip them all up and put them in. I think we put out 18 bags of twigs, and it just went away for free. So there's that alternative too. But if you're dealing with large trunks, we couldn't have handled anything larger than like 6 inches in diameter. So, certainly there's a lot of stuff that comes down that's a lot bigger than that.
Commissioner Dubak or Commissioner Colo?
More handsome. I'm not trying to propose a new program here tonight, just we don't often talk about the solid waste fund, and to see the balance in it and what we have. If Mr. Ricker, possibly look into it and see if there's other options out there. I know Mr. Lipsky and the DPS team is really good at providing services for our residents.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is, we establish the budget, and then if there's ideas, I think those are good ideas, because I also think, let's take a look and see how we're doing, because we did the other thing I'd like to look at this year, depending on how everything goes, what does it cost to do one of those fall cleanups or spring cleanups, like anything goes, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And, that helps people clean up their yards and stuff, but I think, it'd be interesting to get some community feedback, and if that's something we want to bring back to the table, we know we have a little bit of money in here to do it. We know we have a little bit of money for a few years, and if residents want it, then, ultimately, everybody has to pay for any service, right? We're all taxpayers here, we all have to pay for it, and if people want it, and they say, yep, I want my stuff chipped, I want my stuff hauled out, and anybody pick up, then okay. Then we increase the millage in those out years or sooner to accommodate it. But I think we should, good baseline, good questions, and if we have some ideas, I think we should bring it knowing that we have some opportunities there. Usually people ignore what I have to say. I'll move it closer so they can hear me. Okay, Ms. Rick, sorry.
Okay. And then on the operating budget side for the expenditures, we have a 4.5% increase for SACRA for next year. And it's based on collection and disposal costs due to fuel and CPI escalators. And then $20,000 increase for annual contractual increases for the tree removal service company. And we talked about this briefly, $100,000 for refuse containers in the city parks, and then $150,000 to be transferred over to the motor pool for a new small refuse compactor truck. This is not a replacement. That's why we have to move the 150 over to motor pool. So it would be a brand new service, piece of equipment. Okay, if there's no other comments on solid waste, we can move to page 220, which is for the library. There's not a lot of significant things happening in this fund, so I really condensed the significant note down quite a bit. two of the bigger new expenditures, $14,000 for 2 self-checkout kiosks, and then $30,000 is being requested for waterproofing for the basement of the library building. On page 222 is the summary box, and what this shows that they'll be using about $180,000 of fund balance. And I just want to point out a couple things. This assumes a renewal only. Okay, so revenues could be higher. If an override, they get the additional millage. So this is a conservative, assuming the renewal. And then here in 24-25, you see a big increase, and there's a request for a new roof for $600,000. So you see then the budget going back down the next year. So that's where you see it gets a little tight. The money gets a little tight there in 24-25.
Mr. Macy.
So I mean, I understand that all these things are done conservatively in terms of the future forecast, but I don't quite understand why we would budget for a millage renewal when that's literally not possible now with what we put on the ballot. It's either going to be an increase back to the 1 mills, or it's not going to happen. So doesn't it seem like we should budget on the reality that it's either A or B, right? It can't be just a renewal.
Yeah, the information I had, it was 2 questions. When this was put together, that it was 2 questions. So,
Okay, it's not though, is it?
yeah.
It's one piece on the ballot.
It's combined. It calls for the renewal and an increase to override the Headley amendment.
Right, but for one question.
It's on one question, that's correct.
Okay, so that explains why you did it that way. If she thought it was going to be 2 things on the ballot.
CDBG.
She was assuming one but not the other. It doesn't explain why it would stay that way, but.
Okay, page 227 is the CDBG fund. And it includes $35,000 to provide supportive services for residents who qualify through the city's Royal Oak Senior Essential Services Program. That's administered by the Recreation Department. That's a $10,000 increase from 21-22. And $25,000 is budgeted to support local organizations that provide homeless assistance and emergency shelter programs, which is a $3,500 increase. And then currently the capital projects, tree planting program, $100,000, a Webster Road retaining wall, $100,000, and Beverly Court and Fry's Park improvements, $300,000.
Commissioner Cole?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When this budget was put together, those were part of the projects we're looking at. I'm on the CBDG, the Rehab Board of Appeals that selects this. And we've kind of gone a different way. The engineer has picked up the cost of the Beverly Court and Fry's Park improvement, along with DPS. In the tree planting program, we actually received federal funds for this year. So the block grant, we decided that was not the best use of those funds. That left us with 2 options this year, to kind of mostly fund a park and repair a retaining wall. The board last night decided it was the best use of our funds to fully do one project. So they put $500,000 towards one project. I would hope that this body would consider funding the Webster Road retaining wall in the budget here. I don't know if Mr. Bracken, if it's through ARPA funds as an infrastructure project or the general fund. It's in the city right away on Webster Road, so it's something that we're responsible for. The body just didn't feel like it was the best use of the block grant funds to spend those last night.
We can take a look at that, so, in essence of time, we can spend a lot of time talking about specifics on that. But to answer your question, there are ways that we can carry that out, and we'll be working with the city engineer, and I had a conversation with the planner this morning, so.
Commissioner Macy?
Just to clarify, Commissioner Cole, you took that out of the budget last night and want us to put it back in the budget tonight? Just that's what the plan was?
No. So, we decided to fully fund one program. And
Instead of this $100,000 thing that was in here before, and now you're saying you want us to add that on?
It didn't seem like, so when we looked at Black Grant funds, we thought what would best impact the most people. So it was kind of funding a park and then doing this wall. The thought of that board, and I agree with them, is that this is city property that we should look at as a body. We have a lot of ARPA funds.
You're making it sound like it was a decision between one or the other, but you're clearly not, since you're now asking for us to do both.
No, I think it's the responsibility of the city to do the Webster Wall. So it's...
Instead of block grant funds.
Instead of block grant funds, yeah. Like instead of using block grant funds, we have other funding sources such as ARPA available to us to do that wall.
Sorry, that struck me as funny. But my actual question was about the $25,000 for the homeless assistance and also the increase to roses. So we have that CARES Act money that we don't seem to know how to spend, and those seem to me to be like exactly the eligible expenses that that money could go for. And I wasn't here on the other day, but there's numerous things earlier on the budget that I felt that way about, and I'm just wondering, the thought of returning $700,000 while we're still spending that money here in this budget on things that could be eligible expenses seems crazy to me. So I hope we're really looking closely at all of the things that could be eligible for that CARES Act money and making sure that we're spending that first if we can.
So if Mr. Murphy and I have had long conversations. I mean, we sat around for about 2 hours after the last Rehab Board of Appeals meeting discussing these two programs specifically and how they could tie in to the CARES Act funding. For that one-time expenditure, it's CARES Act 5, and they just didn't qualify.
Okay, so I've had similar conversations with Mr. Murphy, and I understand that. However, I've looked at other municipalities, and they are spending the money on these things. So I hope we're looking really carefully at that, because giving that $700,000 back seems wasteful. I mean, is that not your understanding too?
I want to use it. I'm trying to spend it as, There's a planner magazine that I think most of us got that has a good roadmap to how other municipalities are using it. So I think continuing to leave pressure on this is the right move.
Okay. Anybody else? All right.
To state construction code, that's page 233 and 234. We have revenues decreasing due to budgeting conservatively as the building permits are cyclical. So we tend to do that each year. Personnel costs are increasing due to we have some newer staff that should be getting some merit increases, and also they anticipate filling some of the vacancies that they've had. And then also this fund has 80% of the fire department's new inspector position allocated to it.
So I have a question on this one. I mean, we've talked about this in the past. There's a lot of balance in here. There's a huge fund balance. We can kind of get us in a little bit of trouble. And I had an idea, and I'm pitching it now.
Okay.
I think because we've had, we typically get some calls on, from contractors and from people that are doing inspections in their homes, and you never get the good calls, right? You never get anybody saying like, hey, everything worked flawlessly. Thank you, Commissioner Colo. And I think this is an opportunity, and I put a challenge out a few years ago, and I really haven't seen much traction with it. I've seen other departments kind of work similar angles, but I think here this is an important one where I think that a lot of money's on the line for people that are investing in their home. Like if you are putting an addition on your house, not only is it a lot of money, it's inconvenience for your family. And I think that this is an opportunity for us to fund, like, and excuse, I don't have a word for it in government language, but like a customer management system where we have the ability for people to take surveys, you know, after they're done or get their permit, where we have the ability to track and trace, so the city manager doesn't have to call up the building department. They can find out every interaction that took place, every email call, things of that nature. And I think we can build it because there's a lot of volume coming out of this department. I think we can fund it and build it for this department. And then other departments that interface with the public, you know, could use it as well for a very nominal fee, because you know you're paying for it already out of this fund. Does that make sense? So I think right now some of the issues we have is like if somebody calls me and says, hey, you know, your building department didn't respond or they did this issue or whatever, it becomes a completely difficult situation for us to go and say, Mr. Brake, what happened here? Mr. Brake says, I don't know, I'm the city manager. Let me go call the building official. And the building official says, well, you know, we had this, this, and this. And we play this round robin. Eventually things get figured out, resolved. Sometimes it's a misunderstanding. Sometimes, you know, occasionally we're all humans who drop the ball. And sometimes it's just whatever it is. And I think that exhausts and uses a lot of time from the commission, from the city manager, from building staff. And I think if we have sort of a customer relationship management system built in this department, world class, get some consulting, pay some people to help us design it that works. We can use that for every other issue, and that way we as a board oversight might even have read access to that system. So if someone sends us an email and says, hey, I'm very disappointed in you know, this issue, we can go in and look and see, well, you know, engineering called it back 3 times about the sidewalk. You know, on this date, they explained this is what the issue was. Everything's done in 2 minutes. Like, we understand what's going on, and we don't spin everybody's wheels. And I think if we're going to be accountable, and we want to be better as a city, and we want to improve our service, I think that we need to have accountability to the public, and that when they want to provide feedback or they want to provide a survey that says everything worked well or didn't, I think that's something that we should be doing, especially in an enterprise fund where people are paying for a fee for service. Commissioner Prush?
Are you talking about building inspection, or are you talking about code enforcement? Because, I mean, when we had an addition put on 2 years ago, a pretty significant addition of first floor bathrooms. There were plumbing inspectors, there were building inspectors, there were electrical inspectors, there was foundation inspectors. We as homeowners didn't have contact with any of them. I mean, that was our contractor who had direct face-to-face contact with all of them. I have no idea when they showed up, except that we got these little stickers saying that you were approved or not. And so if the survey came to us as taxpayers, I wouldn't know how to respond, because...
I think it'd be whoever pulled the permit. If it was the contractor that pulled the permit, they could fill it out and say, like, how are we doing? Are we doing a good job?
That makes sense.
And I also think, too, because we had an issue, Mr. Brake, didn't we, where somebody was calling and they're like, what the heck, what's going on? Their contractor was giving them a line. They hadn't actually pulled the permit.
Yes.
And they were saying, oh, the city's being slow or whatever. And it's like, well, I don't know if that's the case. But, you know, that would be something that even citizens could go in and look on their property and see if their contractor's being honest. You know what I mean? Did something fail? Did something go good? Did they miss an inspection appointment? And have this, I mean, I'm dreaming here, but with this kind of money in here, you could do something that really empowers residential property owners and really holds us accountable to delivering the services we expect to deliver, have metrics. I mean, if we're, you know, delaying, if our business model isn't working because we're only inspecting things, you know, every so often, or if it is working and people want to complain about it, we can say, look, 99.6% of the time, everybody's happy. You know, I understand something fell through the cracks, but, you know, let's talk about it. I just think it makes, I'd say a lot of the stuff I deal with as mayor, just because of the sheer volume of building, comes in out of the building department. We spend hours as city staff and everything tracking stuff down. I think if we had a system here that worked for people, and then we can adopt it in other areas, water, billing, whatever the interface is, then people have the ability to manage, and we hold ourselves accountable to a certain service level. Commissioner Cole?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I understand you correctly, you're talking about CRM. I think Salesforce is a very popular one that most people know of. And it seems to me what you're describing is a way to track individuals and their interactions with the city. I've worked at a company, we use Dynamics, which is a Microsoft product also, which even integrates into the Outlook email that we all use. And it seems like a phenomenal idea, right? Like this is a way that we can connect with our residents beyond the survey too, to know, but more so know what all their interactions with City Hall are, and then expand it to every other department, so that we can track their level. Like you're saying, this is a great way to track level of service. Like we see a lot of performance indicators in here, but customer satisfaction that we see on a regular basis and see how people use and interact with the City Hall, I think is the best way to, pulling in that data to see how they use our services is the best way to improve them. So that seems like your home run.
And it could even be an extension of BSM, but BSM can work with Salesforce.
Yes,
all these things can through APIs can work.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Brake.
Okay, so first off, I'm writing down notes. Let us look into it, and there needs to be industry specific that understands in the public sector. Keep in mind that the comment that you made earlier about knowing whether or not a permit is pulled, that homeowners have access to the BSNA files on your own property. And so if someone is not pulling a permit or claiming that they did when they haven't, you have the ability of going in and looking that information up, number one.
Sure, I've done it.
Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify that. Also, keep in mind that when we do the Cobalt, the citizen satisfaction survey, albeit it's very broadly written, but we do get metrics there. That doesn't get into, I understand what you're saying. This is issue specific.
This isn't strategic. This is like, okay, I went in, like the airlines do. Will you fill out, stay on the line for 5 minutes to complete the survey? How was your experience? And if there's something we want to hone in on, like, was it timely? Did you feel that you were treated fairly? Whatever it may be. And those numbers aren't going to be, like, look, every industry is different. If we're a hotel, we're going to be like, oh yeah, everybody's great. But like, a lot of people don't like City Hall because we have to enforce the rules. But at least we have something we can go on and we can track. I can tell you firsthand, and I won't tell what departments, but we've had some pretty bad situations where the interaction with the public has been absolutely, fell short and is embarrassing as an elected official. And we have a lot of good ones too. And I think it's an opportunity to reward and create a culture of accountability, create a culture of service, and just to have this system in place. I don't know that we connect anything right now. And frankly, email's the way we do it. It's just a bunch of forwarding of emails to get to the bottom of someone's matter. And I think we can get to the bottom of a matter in 30 seconds if we, had something like this in place.
Okay. Because it can connect to Slack also, right? Like you can connect. There's a lot of ways that we could troubleshoot someone's issue when it's a little bit more automated like this, checklists that go with it. I know today, just in my industry, I had to look up a vendor and all the sites that they'd been to for my customers. And it was easier to do because we have this relationship management software. I could see every interaction they had. Knowing someone's interactions with City Hall and how often they are interacting with the water department, how often they're interacting with engineering or the PD, I think, or maybe PD is a bad example.
We already have it at PD.
Yeah. Any other non-public service department, I think is a good metric to have, and kind of brings us into that next level.
Yeah. And maybe my response that I illustrate to you is not the right answer, but I do think we need to bring in somebody from the outside to consult on how to ensure that we're delivering the very best services. And I think one of the outcomes is going to be one of these systems. So I would like to put in the budget here, out of this fund, maybe, allocate $50,000. Because I think people paying these permit fees, there's things that we've been doing the same way for 20, 30 years, you know what I mean? There's a better way of doing it. It shouldn't come from within. It should come from the outside to give us. And there's folks out there that do it. Because I always hear, oh, Troy's better. and then I hear, oh, Birmingham's worse. How can we be the best in the service that we deliver?
Okay.
And the outcome of that consulting may be the funding of a CRM system that we can use elsewhere in the city, but just.
And again, I'm supportive of that. So, like I said, I've noted that, and so I agree with you specifically in this department. So,
Commissioner Dubuck?
I think there's agreement. I just wanted to support the concept. We've been talking about it for years.
Yeah.
The dollars are there for it, and I think if it's between rolling back those fees or ensuring we're providing the highest quality service, I think people would err on the side of wanting a higher quality service versus you're saving $5-10 for a permit.
You save $10, but your project's delayed by 10 days.
Yeah, I think that's a wise use of those funds if they're available.
Sorry. I literally have a Post-it note called wish list, and that was one of them on there. It was just by chance I picked that one at home when I was reviewing the budget. Okay. I'll look back to me to look back to Ms. Rudden.
We're ready to move on. I added the roots fund in the section of for the arts. And that's to transfer out of the general fund to, we still have a couple things in
237.
She added it, so it's not lunchbox. She wasn't going to cover it, but since you asked.
Oh, okay.
is for increasing the number of our explored program pieces.
So we have a fund balance here. I don't understand why Roots still exist. So I feel like Roots, we've talked about getting rid of it. When I was on the library board, there's discussions about the library board, I think, took all their money out of it because we're told it's going away. As before as a commissioner here. What is why are we maintaining this fund balance in here? And what's the long-term plan with this specific fund?
I don't think there is one. That's
Okay.
why I'm going through the expenditure side of it. So I don't think they've finalized any plans for what they're going to do with that yet. So,
Are these funds, are they tied to anything? Are they restricted?
yeah, with the various, users of Roots. So, yeah, it's a mix. So we can get you a breakdown if you want.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a question that eventually this is going to move over to our charitable side, and then all of those activities would be funded out of there? Or these ones have certain restrictions to them that we have to do it out of Roots, and that's why we have to maintain this skeleton fund here?
It might be a mix
Okay.
of those, but yeah, I would have to get the details for you. I don't have them all.
Commissioner Prush?
Thank you.
In terms of the expenditures for the Commission for the Arts, unless there's something that I don't see, I don't think we get contributions. We just spend money. We have an artist laureate program, and that $5,000 stipend just comes out of our budget. That's not a contribution that comes in. The Art Explored, the fees or the payments that we make to people when they give us a piece of art to display for a year, that just comes out of our budget. We don't get any contributions for that directly. So I guess I'm not sure I understand why, for example, the Commission for the Arts is just not funded out of some fund in the general fund or some program in the general fund. Why it's in Roots. I have a feeling that it just got stuck there years ago because nobody else knew where else to put it. But in terms of the $30,000 that we expend, we're not going to do it this year because the Chamber of Commerce has taken them over. But like the Center Street concerts, all of those expenses, or the expenses for moving the pianos onto the street when we were doing the piano program, those are just expenses that we have that came out of our budget. And we don't get contributions for anything. So I guess I don't understand why Commission for the Arts is budgeted the way it is, and why isn't just it's some pocket in the general fund someplace.
Julie, I'm not as familiar with all of the history, but I don't know if this helps to answer your question. I haven't been able to find a record of any donation that we've received. So I know at one point it was an option that people could donate to the Commission for the Arts, and certainly in our community survey, there was some interest from the community in having more art be community donation funded in the long run. But I'm not as familiar with the different elements.
My explanation or thoughts on why there is the roots and is moving over there is we can keep track of those balances over in roots much easier than, for, let's say, in the general fund, because I think that would be the other option, is if it just remain in the general fund. So, the general fund, at one point had, 20-some $million in it. Now it's at about 15 million. But it's just, the balances are easier to keep track of, belonging to roots. And there were, like the fire department, and then there's, like I said, there's probably seven different users in there. And rather than, like I said, mingle it with the general fund, it'd be much easier to track in the smaller roots fund.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sticking it someplace where it's easier to track, where it's not overwhelmed by everything else, makes
the
sense.
balances, the balances. Are easier to track.
Maybe it's just the roots name that is so, because technically now that we have the nonprofit corporation, which is handling all of the donations, the foundation, maybe we need to rename the fund.
Yeah, we can rename it. Definitely.
Miscellaneous stuff. I don't care what you call it, but I think maybe it's the name Roots that is kind of sidetracking us, because we still associate that with the old Roots program, which did accept donations, and we're not accepting them through this anymore. They're all going to the foundation.
Cool.
Thank you, Brian. So I guess another solution too, we could make a cost center within the general fund for this also. I think.
That does not track the balance. A cost center is just an expenditure. It doesn't keep a balance sheet.
But they don't have a revenue source.
Correct. I'm on the balance side of it, like the balance, like.
I'm sorry, I'm just talking about Commission for the Arts. I'm not talking about the other.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what'll happen is the balance. So let's say there's a donation and you don't spend it all. And so, the Commission for the Arts has $5,000 left. If it's commingled in the general fund, it's so much harder to find it and know it's there. If it's in the Roots fund, it's an easier tracking system. So that's what I mean by the balance.
Okay.
Is anything that's left over that didn't get spent.
Yeah. Just this commission has pretty heavily favored the arts, and we've maintained a steady flow of funding for them. And it's hard to show that and track that. So maybe if there's a way to do it, if there's a special fund, if there's any way to do it, I think that is the next logical step, because we're taking out of this donation fund, but the money going to the Commission for the Arts aren't donations at this point. They're not. We don't have people donating to Roots to fund it. And then in addition, I'd be in favor of dispersing all 335,000 of these dollars into the funds that they're designated to and closing this fund. I think it does create confusion from year to year.
Well, I'll give an example, like the fire fund, or the fire revenues and balances that are in here. Those come from donations. Someone donates to the fire department or whatever. And they specifically don't want that commingled in their 207 public safety fund. Okay, because these are for maybe an appreciation cake for a retirement and things like that. They want they want that separated. So if that's something that you want to do, I can certainly pass that along. I think there's going to be maybe some concerns.
Okay, I guess or maybe give us more visibility into it, but right now, just look at this number, it's 335,000, that just seems to be wandering around. So it would seem better use either spending it or
finding a fund for it.
Commissioner DeBuck?
Yeah, I'm not sure what problem Commissioner Cole is trying to solve. I think Ms. Rudd and the Finance Department have a view to the dollars that are in there and why they're in there and what they're for.
What we can do is, we can report the details on where the 337 belongs to, and then we can specify any concerns that we have about dispersing it to any other funds.
Sure.
Back to any other funds.
Commissioner?
That'd be helpful.
Yeah, I apologize, Commissioner DeBuck, for not understanding the concern, but at the same time, this is a fund that we said that we were getting rid of a handful of years ago, that I think once we established our 501c3 is where most people thought donations were going to. So I think in good policy keeping practice, getting rid of funds that no longer use are probably the best way to go.
Commissioner Prush?
I guess I was unaware that after the foundation was created and up and running, that we were still in some way or another accepting donations, like through the fire fund for specific things. And if that's the case, and those are not in fact going to the foundation, they're actually coming here and being used here, then I think the Roots Fund should still be active, absolutely. But I think having, as you suggested, a breakdown as to where all the money is allocated to, whether it's Commission for the Arts, the $30,000 or $31,000, whatever it is, or the fire fund, or whatever other funds it goes to, I think that would be helpful, just for us to know that. And I agree that if we're still accepting donations that are not going through the foundation, then this needs to continue to exist.
And we should probably let those people know those donations aren't tax deductible if they shift them to the foundation or wherever they're coming from. You know, make sure they're rerouted in the right way if they need to be.
Yeah.
But if you killed the fund, they'd have nowhere else to go, so. It's one way to fix it. Okay, Senior Citizens Fund.
248.
242 or 248?
8. No, no.
I think 242.
It's 2.
Animal shelters, 248.
Sorry about that.
This could be the one time in 10 years that I'm actually right on the page number.
Okay, on the revenue side, revenue from senior activities is budgeted to increase $13,000. Facility rentals, increasing $18,000. Travel, budgeted to increase $25,000, and all this is due to an anticipation of additional participants attending in-person activities. They were down a bit because of the pandemic. On the expenditure side, personnel costs are increasing to pay for raises for part-time staff, and then temporary wages are increasing approximately $29,000, and that's due to having fewer staff in the prior year, and so anticipating additional staffing and hours in 22-23. And then for capital, outdoor fitness equipment is requested for $65,000. And then the senior center front doors, some ADA equipping for $50,000.
I'll just say I think that's cool. This outdoor fitness equipment is wildly popular, and in Grant Park I see senior citizens using it all the time. And I think this idea that, 10 months a year they're using it, 9 months a year probably more realistically, but it's outdoors, you know what I mean? It's safer, especially when we have these variants popping up and down. And this is next to the senior center, right? Where's it? Yeah. So, direct access, parking, everything there. Outdoor exercise has so many more benefits than indoor. And, I think this is, I think we have to get beyond the stigma that senior citizens are all fragile, non-independent people that are housed in their back corner of their bedroom. I mean, I think when we talk about aging in place, this is the best years of, at least I hope, when I'm getting closer to being a senior, it's the best years of my life. You know what I mean? And you can do stuff and be independent, and I think we need to invest in that part of the senior citizen community. Because we're going to be there sooner than we think. Commissioner DeBuck's going to be there sooner than me. But we'll be there sooner than we think,
I'm not saying anything.
I'm threading the line here, Commissioner Perush.
Yes.
Okay, then on page 243 is the budget summary page. And they're going to be using almost 19,000 in fund balance, and it provides for an additional $100,000 transfer to $600,000, and then that $600,000 from the general fund is in each of the forecast years as well. So you see it's pretty smooth, the net change each year in fund balance. It kind of
Keeping a reasonable fund balance. Okay.
Okay,
sorry,
now the
Commissioner
animal shelter.
Yeah, you guys feel free. I probably should have said this at the beginning. I mean, I'm often looking down here during these budget sessions, so feel free to speak up. You guys are all.
So this is another place where I feel like we should be combing through very carefully in terms of the CARES Act funding, and like increasing the price of the meals is one place that feels like that is a hole that could be plugged by CARES Act funding. I wouldn't even argue that outdoor fitness equipment is something that would be covered by that. It's something that is, the pandemic, COVID-related things are things that could have been used in the pandemic, might be used, needed in a future pandemic, and we had to shut down all our recreational programming during the pandemic, and so having that outdoor fitness equipment. So anyway, this is another fund that I think we should look at really carefully in that regard.
So dumb question on this. Maybe I'll just ask a really dumb question. Did we, for all of these capital improvement projects that we have for every fund, did we get an opinion on from Guidehouse, or is this just sort of our internal idea of what things may or may not be considered, and we plan to run them all by Guidehouse?
As the requests were made through CIP, I asked the department heads to identify ones that potentially could be ARPA related. And they were much more construction, the bigger ticket items that we were looking at routinely. But if there's ones that we have to go back through. Now, what Commissioner Macy is addressing is the earlier funding, the pandemic, not the, but I'm writing a note on that. And so I don't know what the time frame might have lapsed, but I don't want to misspeak.
It's not,
so
but it's close.
I think to Commissioner Macy's point, I don't know, I might be a little bold here, but I think Guidehouse should go through, I'm not saying go through our entire budget, but at least go through all the capital expenditures, and then the key accounts, work with finance. I mean, it's not going to change the budget. I don't think we hold up the budget for it. But I think what we need to do is run everything by it so this commission is aware. We may not spend all the ARPA on it, but at least we know all the stuff that we plan to do next year or whatever. What's ARPA? I mean, that's why they're getting, I mean, there's no restriction. We can go to Guidehouse and say, I want to, do this and this and this and this, and that's why they're collecting their fee. Let's get the most money for our fee, and make sure that they have a solid combing through our budget this year as a task, and then come back to us and say, okay, we identified 16 more elements that you guys could use. We may not choose to do it, but that needs to be every time one of these elements comes in front of us to approve as a commission, we should identify whether or not we want to use the ARPA funding or not, and that should be determined by after our public engagement session on ARPA. That's my suggestion.
Super useful.
Commissioner Colo?
That's a great idea, Mr. Murray. I think what Commissioner Macy is also getting to, once again, this is the CARES Act funding that was tied to
$700K, the CARES Act.
So yeah, and there are very restricted measures on that. It has to be in entitlement communities, people eligible for CBDG funds, which senior citizens automatically are. So there's a lot of funding at the senior center that I think Commissioner Macy is trying to hit at, that we can, not hit at, directly say, we can see if, so that's not, I don't know if that's as much Guidehouse as our plan.
No, the CARES Act won't, the CARES Act money obviously won't, but we've also talked about some of the ARPA money too.
Yeah, no, there's great synergy there, but I just want to make sure too, we're also directing the Community Development Department to look at this also, because I think there's a lot in here that we could potentially I think we're all itching to use that 700,000 and not give it back.
Well, it's good fiduciary practice to do it and then serve your unrestricted general fund amounts to use, as agile as you need to use them.
Thank you.
Can we talk about the puppies and kitties next? Oh, no, put one more in there. Yes, all right.
Ducks and geese and pigs.
Chickens.
All right, sometimes snakes and chickens, I guess, too. Shouldn't be so.
We shouldn't say anything.
Okay, personal costs are increasing due to a request for a full-time animal shelter manager. This increase is partially offset by a reduction in part-time wages. And also $90,000 transfer in from the general fund is requested, and this is the second year for that. Prior years, the police department golf outing helped fund this significantly, and then also they used up a significant amount of fund balance. There was a large donation from a resident that they were using for a revenue source, and that has been used up. So you see here, it's getting pretty close to using up fund balance, and then finally in 26, 27, it looks like it's all gets used, but each year has a $90,000 transfer in from the general fund.
Commissioner Mason?
This is probably Mr. Brake. Does the full-time position start like with the budget year, or is it with the creation of the new animal shelter? I'm assuming at the budget year.
Correct.
And then second question is, when we have, if and when we get this new animal
Right.
shelter operation, will there be more full-time staff needed for that, or for that operation?
Likely, I would say let's evaluate that, but, the renovations that are proposed to the building, you're going to be looking at a minimum of probably 18 to 24 months before that's completed.
Okay.
So but point well taken that, we're going to have a larger facility, plus that also gives us additional opportunities to have conversations with Oakland County if there's some possibilities of partnering, of having some sort of an animal control element that's part of the shelter. So this is, a lot of work will be done on that, but you raised some good questions.
And I think, too, part of the work of the current shelter management, they're spending a lot of time on the building, because it's so dilapidated. So, you get a better building, there's going to be more time spent caring for animals, which will be great, but also maybe, offset the need for another FTE, notwithstanding other needs for it. Just
Excellent.
Commissioner Clary?
I'm looking at page 250, and these are the part-time positions. There will still be at least one part-time position at the shelter, correct? Because I know at least right now there's 2 or 3.
I think they're volunteers.
Yes. We don't, yeah, we only put numbers in for full-time staff, and what we do for part-time, we give a dollar amount, and then they use that in various ways. They might have, one person working 27 hours, or 2 people working, half of that. So we don't budget numbers for part-time, but there is budget in the part-time account for part-time staff.
Yeah, so that should not be construed that we're eliminating part-time positions.
That's what I'm on. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
If we're ready to move on, the DDA fund is page 261. And this is greatly abbreviated from what's in the book. Tax capture revenue has been increasing significantly and budgeted at $6 million for next year. Expenditures, $155,000 is allocated for Arts Beats and Eats retail dollars. Our Town Instagram contest, and $105,000 for Small Business Saturday, $25,000 for a workforce development program, and $10,000 for social district and related activities. In the promotion committee account, that increased, or is requested to be increased $363,000, and for a total budget of $1,052,000. And what's included in that is Spooktacular, $10,000, Jingle Event and Parade, $70,000, Small Business Saturday, $15,000, Arts Beats and Eats, $100,000, St. Patrick's Day Parade, $2,000, Rock and Rides, $35,000, Royal Oak Pride, $75,000, and then there's other special events and sponsorships, $160,000. Public relations, $90,000, social media content, decal, $100,000, and media buys and social media boosts, $160,000, and then $35,000 for Taco Fest and other events. Miscellaneous contracted services increased by approximately $597,000 for a budget of $2,387,000. Significant expenditures in this account are $1.25 million for placemaking improvements at 5th Street Plaza and other locations, $425,000 for downtown maintenance services, $150,000 for alley improvements, $62,000 for stamped concrete, annual maintenance and sealing, $500,000 for other services yet to be determined, and then increasing legal advisory council, $30,000, due to the intention to solicit bids for contracted legal services. And on page 262, shows the forecast, and the fund is doing well. And this is one budget that always gets adjusted, but it is currently showing increases in fund balance. But there is a requirement to spend the funding within 2 years, or it goes back to the taxing authority. So pretty confident there'll be some adjustments to this this forecast.
So, sorry if this was covered the last budget meeting. I watched most of it, but I dropped audio a few times, including during the public safety conversation. Did it come up about the fact that the DDA is still at that $540,000, and whether or not it's time to increase that amount? Did that come up?
It did not.
Oh, I'd like to bring it up. I don't know how long it's been exactly at that rate, but it feels like as we've continued to do a lot of improvements for the downtown, and we're seeing people being drawn in, it just feels like maybe, as Commissioner Colo has brought up in some lesser contracts, there should be an increase in that over time as our costs increase, which they obviously are.
So DDA have to put that in the budget and approve it. It's always this weird thing I try to remember with the library budget and with the DDA in particular. If we were to do something like that, make that change, doesn't the DDA have to approve it, or how does that work? Or do we send it back down to them as an amendment?
I would say that yes, but it's an autonomous board, so they would have to approve that, so.
But we could inform them that we're raising the rates.
Right.
So they have to adjust the budget. Or we raise the rates, and then the budget just gets amended when it comes time to pay the bill.
Yeah.
We approve their budget. They're autonomous board, but we approve them, much like the library board, I believe.
Yeah.
We approve their budget, and then they can spend within the budget that we approve, is my understanding, it's much like the library.
Yes.
What do you recommend,
Is that it?
Ms. Rod?
It's a little different.
I mean, we're not going to hold up the budget process on our end for a thing, but is it something that we take as an action item to bring up when this comes to the table, that we put in front of us, and then if we approve it, consult with the DDA, if we change the rates, negotiate with them, whatever it may be, then we would just do a budget amendment, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, that might be the
We'll take a
best
look
way.
at it. I've made a note of that.
Ms. Liao?
So,
I wanted to correct a statement that's in there as far as in the first, second, third, fourth, fifth paragraph about the contracted legal services that DD is going out to. There's, after the boldface, it says those of which would not be handled by the city attorney's office. It's not necessarily that it would not be handled, it's cannot be handled. There are certain contracts the DDA enters into with the city. I am the city's attorney. I can't represent the DDA to the same contract where I represent the city. So for those types of contracts, I have to abstain. My duty of loyalty is to the city as an organization, not DDA. So I just wanted to explain that it's not that I won't do it or would not do it. I cannot risk setting myself up for have a grievance filed against me for representing two different parties to a transaction. And also my not being loyal to this organization.
Your unbridled loyalty is understood and recognized by this commission.
I feel like I want to use the term conciliary.
Commissioner Cole.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize too, we are partners with the TDA, right?
Yeah.
You know, we've done a lot with them with the park. They are carrying a 27% fund balance right now, so even like I believe at our last meeting there was a $50,000 contract for the money at Centennial Commons. So looking at this fund balance, we probably could have kept it and improved Centennial Commons with it on our own, as you know, and they could have maintained the parks there. So I think there was a conversation about what their fund balance is and their obligation to spend it a little bit more, because this is money that comes off of taxes within the city. It comes off of the millages. It's money out of road millage, out of all of our different millages. So I think it's important that we work with them to make sure that this is being spent back into the city expeditiously. So this is an important conversation I have.
Yeah, no, I think it's fair to have a conversation about the rate and just, you know, if we have to adjust it, do it in partnership with them and then amend the budget. Commissioner DeBuck?
Yeah, I mean, it's worth a conversation. I think we have to tread lightly because I remember from previous conversations with the city attorney around this, we're already on legally thin ice with regard to charging the DDA for a service that the city is obliged to provide throughout the city. And that is not what DDA funds are actually built for. So one question is, does the DDA capture the public safety millage, or do they let that pass through?
They capture it.
They're capturing it, and that's their prerogative whether or not they capture that. Is that correct?
that is correct.
Okay, so the DDA could opt to only capture a portion of it, or do they have to go all in or all out?
They don't have the ability of picking and choosing what ones they capture. It's set up that they're capturing all funds. And for that matter, the taxing entity doesn't have the ability of saying, well, you can't contribute that. So it doesn't work that way in that regard. So to mandate that, you know, they spend that back proportionally, I don't know, that's more of a legal question.
Right.
And the way that the DDA law is set up,
So, and again, we've had this conversation before where the DDA is capturing all the kinds of tax captures that would go out of the city. So it would go to the county, would go to other taxing entities. We're capturing those in the DDA for a specific DDA purpose. But then to say, we're going to take those dollars that would have gone to other entities and then use them for our essential public works, that's, I'm just saying it's murky. And we've had this conversation before. So if there's a legal and justifiable way to do that, I think this gets into the conversation about the DDA somehow being a disproportionate draw on public safety services, and we've had that debate. We've looked at the numbers, and that's not accurate. So I'm willing to have the conversation, but we've had it many times before, and we need to have it, you know, on solid legal ground and on solid public policy ground, which is, you know, somewhere in the gray. So.
All right.
Mayor, if I may, before we leave the special revenue funds, there was a question that was asked Monday night back in the public safety fund, specifically in the police department, having to do with the building maintenance contract and why there was an increase. And I asked the chief about that, and let me see if I can attempt to explain this. So as they started to occupy the building, there was a certain amount that was still covered by Colasante as part of the construction agreement. And then a contract with ATI was prorated for a portion of the year. When it was extended into this upcoming fiscal year, they caught that they only gave an estimate of 8 months, and so that needed an additional 4 months to complete 1 year's contract. So that's why there was reflected, described as an increase in the maintenance, but the actual overall cost increase is 1.9%. So I just wanted to clarify that it is a necessary cost. That's why it was more of an adjustment than it is more of an accounting adjustment to account for a full calendar year. And I realize I've read the same thing, and I was not clear about that, but that was a good question that Commissioner Colo asked, and so I just want to provide that information before we move on to the debt service funds. So,
Thank you.
Start out with there is no proposals to do that for any projects in the upcoming budget. What I wanted to show was the fire debt that we are no longer levying a millage for. So the revenue and expenditure for 22-23 is 0, and then I'm just showing the court building debt, and that will be paid off in 23-24, and this is paid by the general fund. The DDA used to assist with payment early on with this, and probably maybe 7 years ago or so, that ended, and the general fund's been picking up that court debt 100%.
So that debt will retire next fiscal year?
23-24.
Right, okay, and that's not accounted for in our extrapolations, that it's
It is.
being retired? It is being?
Yeah, because it's something I know.
It's something
So
major, okay, something major you know.
I do take it out.
Okay, got
So,
it.
yeah, you don't see it in 24-25 in the
Got it.
forecast. Yeah. And then I just want to mention on pages, because I don't want to give the impression this is all our debt, just these two. Pages 268 through 271 are the narratives for the various debts the city has. And we account for those in various ways, and usually trickle them through the various funds, not the debt funds. Okay. The capital improvement tab, what that is essentially the CIP document. Okay, this is not what's in the budget. It's not the projects in the budget. This is a replication of the capital improvement plan. So this is the wish list. If it makes it to the budget, we put it in the orange boxes.
Yep.
Okay?
So we've covered all of those in the orange boxes,
Yeah.
but here's the entire radar that everything we should or want to do.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the enterprise funds is the next tab. Yes. And I have page 327 for recreation. So these summary boxes are not as friendly as the general fund and the special revenue funds, because that's modified accrual accounting. This is full accrual, and we have an ending unrestricted net assets, which really isn't cash like we're used to seeing in the general fund. So there could be assets in this number as well. So it gets a little, I hesitate sometimes to even put it on here, but at least you can see this number here, where that's more like, okay, you know you're using cash by looking at this number. This number, net assets, like I said, it's not necessarily cash. It could be assets as well, okay? But what I've done in some of these, I've removed the depreciation and expenses, because that's not cash. Okay, so it's over, kind of really
overstating the expenses for what you're used to on the modified accrual in the general fund and the special revenue funds. So this gives you a better idea of really revenues and expenditures in and out of money. So outdoor rental revenue, youth enrichment, and adult fitness program revenues are budgeted to increase due to increase in anticipated participation levels because they were down due to the pandemic. Personnel costs are increasing, and that's primarily from the request to increase temporary wages, and that increase is $40,000, and that's for 2 additional field attendants at Memorial Park. And then the estimated forecast demonstrates use of net assets each year, that's here, ultimately projecting a deficit position in the very last year. However, this does not account for any adjustments in fees that could take place in the meantime.
Yeah. This might be a question for Mr. Brake, but probably Ms. Rudd knows the answer too. What are the field attendants going to be doing in Memorial Park?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the
So
question?
the recreation fund is adding $40,000 in temporary wages for 2 additional field attendants at Memorial Park. So I know we've got the leprechauns there, but is this like a service to them, or what are these field attendants?
I will make a note of that and I'll find out. So,
My guess is
yeah.
we probably have a similar situation, like with sidewalks, where you have the field attendants are taking care of the field, but if we look back at the leprechauns deal, they're bringing in revenue. So it
Yeah,
might be
I
one
don't
of
believe
these
it's
things
related
where
to that, but I don't know.
They're
Yeah.
not bringing in a lot of revenue.
they rent the facility, right?
They pay the same field rental as everybody else. So I guess that's what I'm wondering, is like, is this a... But the other thing I was wondering about is I was kind of hopeful that they were like cleanup crew, and I wondered if we could ship some of that to solid waste. But I don't know what they are.
No, cleanup crews are, the cleanup crews are billed back to the solid waste funds. So there are staff for DPS that do service parks that is billed to the fund. So I can tell you these field attendants would not pertain to, trash pickup, those sort of details, but I'll find out.
Okay.
And so.
Okay, we're ready to move on. Parking fund is next, page 330. Revenues are budgeted nearly at the fiscal year 18-19 level, which was pre-COVID, with the exception of the parking garages. So this assumes, again, visitors downtown to levels that we were seeing prior to the pandemic. The parking garage revenue is budgeted higher than the pre-COVID pandemic revenue in order to meet the revenue bond covenants. The parking garage rate structure will need to be reevaluated and possibly increased materially in order to meet the revenue bond needs. This fund does not include any ARPA grant revenue here, or doesn't assume any transfers over from the DDA. Meter revenue and parking lot revenue budgets were estimated with the assistance of the meter technology company that was recently hired and installed the various meters and then the equipment for the lots. And they obtained the information for the forecasting from their data that they've been collecting in January and February and March.
Ms. Rudd, a question on that. When we talk about the park, are you saying specifically to the parking garage revenue needs to be reevaluated, or is it the system revenue? Because my understanding is I keep hearing about if we adjust the parking fees and amounts with the meters, that that affects your bonds. but then wouldn't it go the other way, where whatever we're making in fines or whatever we're making in parking meter revenue in the surface lots and stuff, cover? I mean, I guess it's going back a little bit when we bonded these things, but how does the covenant work one way but not the other?
It looks at the system revenue, and the reason I put garages in here, because if you increase the meters and the lots where the technology is, I guess you could do that, but the company gets half of it.
Okay, yeah.
So.
But
and-
if you don't raise them, then people are more persuaded to park there too, versus the garage.
Well, in addition, if you raise at the garage, the city keeps 100% of it, number one. And number
Right.
two, now you're getting the revenues that are closer to your expenses of that structure. Because
Okay.
right now, the expenses are
Well, and I think we have to keep in mind to make the garages more affordable than the street parking too, for longer term parking as well. So it's kind of there's a lot of massaging and balancing to get both the budget part right, but also to get the consumer or the parker motivations aligned to do what you want to happen.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the new structure of the rates that I think that got changed in the fall of 2020, I believe, with the first 2 hours free rather than the $5 flat,
Yeah.
is a significant
sure.
hit to the fund.
Yeah.
So I'm with you, Mayor. I feel like this was a scary thing to me in this budget, that we are going to have to reevaluate and materially adjust something that we just changed a couple years ago, and I thought when we changed it, we were assured that it would be fine for our parking by revenues. But I'm confused in the same way, because I thought that even though half the money is going to MPS from the meters, I thought we were still getting quite a bit of money in from that, and I don't understand. Okay, you're shaking your head, so maybe I'm wrong. But let's pretend we are. Let's pretend we're getting a lot of money, and I was right about that. Could we then use it for this, for the bonds? We can, right?
If you're talking about the violation money, which, yes, we are getting a significant amount from the violations, that goes into the general fund. So now if you're moving money out of the general fund,
No, for the parking meter money, we can't use that for the bond covenants.
yes, we can, but
Okay.
it's not significantly high. It's virtually the same.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
it's a trade, because you would think
So-
though that you'd have 100% or more compliance with the parking meters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have not, the company has not shown or provided the information that there would be an uptick in revenues for the lots. So it's pretty neutral.
Pretty flat.
Yet we have the expense. We have the expense side of it.
Great, okay,
So-
but let me make sure I understood the thing you just said. So the violation money goes to the general fund. The parking meter money, in the theory that we get any, goes where?
Goes to the auto parking fund.
Goes to the parking fund.
Yep.
Okay,
The only
and
thing
then-
that goes to the general fund is the violation money.
And is there a reason we couldn't take it out of the general fund? Like, we can't tax, I understand, but
Yeah, but you'd have to give something up in the general fund.
Okay, so, but that additional money is from parking, entering the general fund, and is theoretically available to this, we've just made other choices.
Correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Fellow?
I'll apologize at the get-go I know there's different types of accounting going on here. Looking just at the ending unrestricted net assets, this year we have about 700,000, and by 2027, there's 10 times that, it's 7 million, right? That's not all just a parking structure becoming more valuable over time, right? Because that's an asset in the parking fund, right? Just the parking structure?
No, that's the entire fund.
Oh, well, I'm guessing what assets are in the fund? Like when I
Well, yeah, as we pay the principal off on the debt payments, that becomes an asset. So
Okay.
that's just not, like I was saying before, it's just not.
So there's an inverse relationship. We earn more money on the parking, like the decks are worth more to us as an asset
We own
every
more
year.
of them. We own
As we
more.
owe less, right? We owe more, okay.
As you pay off the debt.
Yeah, and it depends how we're depreciating them as well.
Right.
Too.
Yeah, 'cause they do have a life.
So really, I mean, and then are you looking at the book value or the market
Yeah.
value of that parking structure as well?
So I guess a question then, to help us as commissioners really understand this, can we get a regular accounting of how much money it costs us in bond payments every year, and how much money it costs us, how much money we bring in parking revenue. I think that number is the line that we need to see at this point, because I don't think anyone has an appetite to really raise rates on a parking structure. Commissioner DeBuck.
So, on the new system, which is, struggling so far, we were made to understand that we had less than 50% compliance at our meters, and that the new system was one way or the other, folks are going to pay. They're going to be compliant and pay at the meter, so there should be a surge in payments at the meter, or you're going to get ticketed, like 100%. People are going to pay one way or the other, either the low fee of compliance or the high fee of penalty. We're not seeing any meaningful bump at the meters. That's what we're saying right now, but we've only been live for a couple months. So you're saying month over month from what we saw last year under the old system, we're not seeing any meter collection bump that's meaningful.
It is meaningful, correct, yeah.
Okay.
Again, that's from the company, and,
Sure.
they're the experts, so,
Okay.
they've implemented another.
The surge in revenue that we should see then, that would be coming then, is on the violation side.
Correct.
Does your current general fund projection account for that year over year?
What they estimated, it would peak in next year, 22, 23.
Okay. I remember you
When
saying
there's
this,
the
yeah.
education and people learn how to use it, and then it decreases a little bit, but not significantly.
Okay. All right.
And then,
I do remember you
and then
mentioning
flattens
that.
out.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Commissioner Bruce?
If you go back to page 78, where it talks about the general fund summary, it says, parking violations are budgeted to increase by $4,888,000 based on the new meter contractor's projections. However, nearly half of that revenue will be shared with the contractor. This is the first time that I seriously took a look at that number. I guess I didn't realize that number, dollar number for violations is that high. I guess I had no concept of what it was, but almost $5 million for violations. That's a huge significant.
Yeah. We probably, I'm just going to say maybe 5 years ago, we may have been more than that. We peaked at about 1.3 million in violations, and as we got the kiosks in the lots and some technology, that decreased down to about 600 or a little less than 600,000 annually. So it is a significant change.
That was also at $10 a ticket, right? Not 20.
Correct. Correct.
But still, double it, 1.2
Correct.
versus 5.
Okay. It's not a question, it's just a comment that I was stunned when I actually seriously looked at the number again.
Yeah.
All right, well, we got definitely some work to do on parking, and I think that this budget's going to get scrambled up quite a bit over the next number of months because we're going to be looking at policy. We're going to be looking at vendor issues, and we're going to be looking at a whole host of things that will, but it's good that this is a good baseline to look at and work from as we start to change the formulas and see, I mean, our whole goal was to offer convenient parking that charges a little bit to keep the service, to pay for the garages, all the things people need to park their cars. And I think we want to keep in the spirit of that. And, obviously we didn't predict this pickle we're in with the current vendor that we're working through. So lots of work to do on this one. So it will change.
Okay, if we're ready to move on to the farmer's market, page 338. Okay, the slide is very much abbreviated from what's in the book, but there's just a lot of programming information that's been provided. But essentially, rental revenue is budgeted to continue to increase until back to full capacity again because of the pandemic. So The contracted worker services is increasing $20,000, and that's to allow for additional staffing for the market manager company because of the events coming back to nearly 100%. And then there's some carryover projects that were not accomplished this year. The electrical upgrades, like to carry over for approximately $16,000, and then some interior wall improvements for $11,000.
Bless you.
And then on page 339, again, this is an enterprise fund. It gets a little tricky. I did remove the depreciation so you could see more of how this fund might work if it was a special revenue fund. And for next year, pretty much revenues are anticipated to equal expenditures, even with the $27,000 in capital. And then it's looking like in future years, there might be a little bit extra to save up for other improvement projects that might come along.
So they have the numbers going from 4,000 to 4,500 to 5,000 attendance, Saturday and Sunday combined. It's growing. How's that possible? We took away all the parking. The farmer's market's closing. So confused. Sorry, I always have to throw that out there.
Okay.
Prom is happening there right now, I think.
The what?
I think the Rural High School prom is happening there right now.
Is that what's going on?
That's what we keep seeing these.
They think this is the farmer's market? Is that why they walked in?
I think they went to the bathroom.
Or do they just want a picture under Commissioner Dubuck's headshot somewhere in the building?
Must be that.
Scare them away.
Sorry. Technically 8:10, so permitted to have a little happy hour.
The fun vacation for prom. That's very cool.
Water and sewer.
Water and sewer fund.
Yeah, the farmer's market's thriving, and it's predicted to thrive.
Who's from here?
Roll, let's
Rural
go.
High School, I think.
It's actually having the opposite.
definitely tonight.
Or
Saw a bunch of kids.
double
My
the impact.
rotate pictures.
Because we saw kids taking pictures last night. Maybe they were just.
Okay.
That's when they don't
Water and
know how to-
sewer begins on
Yeah.
page 341.
Huh, that's fun.
And the water and sewer combined commodity rate is proposed to increase 4%. So the first two MCFs would be billed at $117.50, and then any additional at $135.10. Again, this year, we're proposing to increase the billing administrative flat fee $1 per quarter to $15, which would be a $4 per year increase. And this increase is the continuation of collecting the billing costs through the flat fee, and then and what we're doing is we're removing them out of the commodity fee. So it's not a new cost that we're charging, we're just shifting it, taking it out of the commodity charge and shifting it into the flat fee. We would be right about at 100% allocated properly in the billing at about $16 or $17. So we might have another year or so to go.
You said the commodity rate is go. I know we talked about this last year too. We did this whole thing, so I mostly remembered it. But now you threw me with this talk about the commodity rate is the $4 is coming out of that because the water rates and sewer rates are going up. So they're going up, and then the fee is going up. So it doesn't seem like the $4 is coming out anywhere.
Oh, yes. Actually, and they would have gone up even further if we didn't have that 1.3 million in ARPA money. So, I mean, we're doing that $500,000 of lead pipe replacement, and we'll show you how much construction that's in here as well. So the commodity covers the capital costs.
Okay.
Yeah,
I guess
so-
to me, trying to explain to people that $60 a year is what it costs to bill you for water, people are not receptive to that at all. And I know you've explained it to me in the past, but I feel like it is worth revisiting. How on earth can it be $60 to bill for water per household per year? That just seems, am I crazy? That seems like so
we
much.
give you the breakdown?
You did,
last year?
you did. So
Okay,
you might as well do it again.
Okay.
I mean, if that's what it costs, do we need a consultant to come in and look at how we can do better there?
Does that include that doesn't include the meter reading at all, does it?
Yeah, it does.
It does. Well, if that's the meter reading, it's not like 3 people billing. I mean, if you have 25,000 water customers, that's 1.5, and you got to get to them every quarter. 25,000 divided by 4, they have to hit 6,250 meters.
So you think it's reasonable? So you think, I mean, are other communities charging $60 in administrative fees a year?
I mean, what they might be charging is just a higher rate, and they don't charge an administrative fee.
But you see what I'm saying is that we're saying, okay, they're charging a higher rate, but
Yeah,
that's...
I think what we're trying to do is to say, because we talked about this years ago too, about the fee, and I'm not arguing with you, I'm just trying to give you some insights as well, that, you know, whether you use 1 gallon of water or you use 1 million gallons of water, there's a flat fee that, you know...
Right, and that's what Julie explained to me, Ms. Wright explained to me last year, that we're just pulling out that flat fee so that the commodity is literally the commodity. But I'm just telling you, I think I'd rather you lied to me, because $60 a year is absurd, and people are outraged, and I think reasonably so about
Who's
it.
outraged?
Are you?
I've never received an email from anybody that said that they were
Oh.
outraged by the admin
Okay,
fee.
so maybe it's just everybody I know, but it feels like $60 a year, and the fact that it keeps going up $1 a year, and I understand the reason behind it. I'm not arguing with the logic of what you're telling me. I'm just telling you that it looks like we are ripping people off. Like the rates are going up and the administrative fee is going up, and then we try to explain, oh, that's just what it costs to bill you. It's not. I don't know. False
Commissioner
flat.
So I don't disagree with Commissioner Macy. I think that there is, you know, maybe outrage is a strong, right? But I think people look and like,
$60.
I think that's the exact reaction people have. People are like, $16, what's this
60.
for? I'm saying 16 a quarter. Let's just say that you open your bill, you see 16, you think, what the heck could this be for? Maybe if we were to put that breakdown that Mr. Hart's going to provide, I mean, if people were to realize, like, we know what goes into it, we know it's the meter reader, we know it's the 39 or 49 cent stamp, we know it's the paper, we know all that. Maybe that should be part of the water bill. Maybe that should be a breakdown that's included so people can understand, give people insight into what the water bill is.
I mean, I think, do we put that on the website, what the administrative fee costs? I mean, I don't know if you put it in the water bill and take out, I mean, in my house, we just pay it when it's high. I just like, okay, we're going to get conscious about water this month.
Even if it's once a year, maybe, then, Mr. Mayor, right? Like a one-time explanation. I think if people just had that quick once-a-year explanation, they would realize it for the rest of the cycles.
In irony, that probably costs money to do.
Then maybe that one's $17 and the rest are 16.
50.
Commissioner Dubus.
So again, like, dollars don't come out of this fund, correct?
Correct.
This is all just to sustain the water system.
Correct.
There is no incentive for us to bring in more money than it needs.
Correct.
Okay, so this is a messaging issue, like, we just have to explain it to people, like,
Maybe
there's
it's
nothing to be
not
mad about. The system costs what it costs. No one's getting ripped off. It's the cost of bringing water to people's homes.
But it is a policy issue how it appears in the bill, and
Sure.
I mean, maybe I'm the only one who has had this experience, but people have come to me and do not understand, and it seems like we're ripping them off because we're putting the administrative fee, like the city gets $15 from you every 3 months for sending you a bill and reading your meter.
Well, and also putting all the people out in the streets that, you know, the entire system that allows us to understand what the bill needs to be and that brings you the water.
So that's a question we even had to ask here tonight. We're commissioners and not everyone knew that.
Right, I'm saying it's a messaging issue. I think the administrative fee makes perfect sense because there's a process involved. whether you use a gallon or 10,000 gallons, there's a process involved in knowing that. I
You gotta get
I
billed.
think it's reasonable policy. I think it's a communication issue, and I agree. We can explain it better, but I think most of the pushback came when we made the transition. That's when we got questions about it. And once it's a regular feature and people understand it, we can put the explainer on the bill, if that's helpful. We've done communications on the bill before, but I think the policy is reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could put, what is this? Like you do in your Verizon bill or whatever, you know, like, oh, sorry, that's what the state charges you. What I'm saying is, like, I mean, there's real cost to this that, you know, from billing. I mean, you got to pay for the envelopes. You got people that call. The other thing, too, all these folks that have issues, are they calling the water department and they ask questions about their bill, like, why is this administrative bill? We should have something there for folks to explain as well. But
Look, if we had a CRM system, that could help a lot.
that's right. So I think, to me, I've never heard, I mean, I heard some chatter in the beginning, like when we did change it, like Commissioner Dubuck, but, you
Also,
know.
last year when we raised it, we heard it again, and we're gonna hear it again, but this is the last one you told me last year, right? This one's the last one.
Maybe.
Oh,
I think I said 16 or 17.
oh my goodness.
So, I mean, yeah, we could put an explanation in the water bill. We can ask the treasurer if she can, or if she's in charge of that, the billing statements, right? Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair, but I personally, from a complete, like, pricing point of view, fairness point of view, transparency point of view, and this is the whole purpose of putting that fee in there. We're being transparent what we're spending in overhead. And so people can be upset, they can question it, but we're being more transparent. You just blend it in the rate. You know, we could hire 1,000 people and they could all work an hour a day, and you know what I mean? People just say, oh, that's the cost of water. But by breaking it down, we're actually being more transparent, and albeit opening up these questions, which is a good thing, we have to answer them.
Right, I think it would be more transparent if people knew what it was for. I feel like it's somewhat less transparent because it looks like it's just a city fee on top of it. And we get billed for lots and lots and lots of things in our lives, and nothing at that rate in terms of the billing fee, right? So that, to me, I get what you're saying, and that it is more transparent if you understand how it works. But if you don't understand how it works, it looks like a big money grab.
I like the phone bill analogy.
Anytime anyone says a money grab, I'm like, for who?
Well,
All of us?
Again, but nobody knows
Yeah.
that, right?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but
The biggest driver are the individuals that use very little water, and their bill is so small, it's not really recovering what the true cost of that customer is.
Right.
And that was really the driving force behind, you know, getting that flat rate
And
out there.
I'd say my electric bill has a few dollar, like, flat fee, administrative fee, and that's once a month, so times 3, I mean, you're getting into the $10, $11 range, and, you know. Commissioner Dubuck?
I can give some insight on that. So I just, you know, I've got my solar going, right? And
Oh, here
I
we go.
produced way more last month than I consumed. So if the credit offsets all of my commodity purchase, the DT still has baked in, like, I still pay like $12 a month. The credit goes forward to my future energy consumption, but I still have to pay them $12 a month cash for the cost of having me connected to the grid so that it can come in and out, which I'm frustrated by because I'm selling them a commodity that they're then selling to everyone else at full price. But nevertheless,
He's doing the work, and they're charging him $12.
it's a similar concept, I think less fair because I'm producing power for them. But the point stands, like each customer does have a cost. There's an overhead cost just to the fact that they have to send me a bill. I am connected to the grid, so I understand that concept.
They gotta read your meter. Yeah, $36 a
Robots
quarter,
read
not 15 a quarter.
Did anyone not know that Commissioner Dubuck got solar power? Has he not told anyone in the stream yet?
I'll talk to you about it if you want to hear about it.
A lot.
We'll talk more about it tonight.
Commissioner Pruitt?
I thought she wanted solar.
Yeah, maybe it's just a naming thing. Maybe instead of an administrative fee, we call it system administration or something like that.
Meter reading,
Connection and
bill
meter reading,
administration.
You know, it's
hotline.
just change the name a little bit so it doesn't sound like it's just some kind of, you
Yeah,
know,
it sounds like it's Paul Breaks fee,
It
administration
does, that's what it
fee.
sounds like.
does,
It
yeah.
sounds like it's, exactly.
or
You'd love to take that
administration
fee.
services or something like that. Just
City
change the
manager's
name.
cut.
Yeah, that
You
sounds,
want your water? Come to the water man.
let's maybe ask Ms. Humax if there's some other.
Going to what Commissioner Peru said, I think it would be more palpable to people if they knew that there was manpower behind it, if they knew that
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
was someone actually going out to, meet the reader.
Oh, yeah, what is DTE's connection fee, and then describe, like you said, like, hey, this is meter reading, this is like, in parentheses, you put, well, what it is.
And to go into to what Commissioner Macy stated, I don't think I got outrage, but I did get quite a bit of concern because it did feel as if we're just raising rates for absolutely no reason and just sticking a label on it. So,
I like the idea of a different name. Well, probably Ms. Eubanks probably have something to say about that, right?
We'll pass it along to the marketing department.
Actually, probably Judy might have a few good ideas.
Yeah.
But there are legal covenants too that, or not covenants, but you have to call it what it is too.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So you can't like call it the, rainbow unicorn and, whatever fee.
I'd be happy to pay that.
It's got, people are like, oh, well, that's good.
Just system administration.
Yeah.
That implies that people are actually doing something for this money,
Yeah.
with this money. It's not just fluff.
Thanks, guys. That makes me feel better.
If you guys want to talk about outrage, you should have tried to go down Lincoln and Main today because it's just impossible. I'm looking at you, Miss Donahue.
Miss Donahue, you know where I live. I got on 696 to get to Main Street.
Miss Donahue, my street's still not done.
I would like to report a pothole. Oh, boy. Sorry.
And on a related note, did we know that Oakland County was going to be resurfacing 12 Mile? That was a big surprise to me when I drove out yesterday.
Yeah, it's on our project map, but our COC is like supposed to notify who's, the people in the vicinity of it. It's not really a mill and cap like we would do here. It's just it's like a very thin maintenance overlay. So
Yeah,
it shouldn't be a
is.
long-term project, but yeah, it's another disturbance in the city.
Okay.
Thanks for improving infrastructure.
You're welcome.
It'll be good in July, August.
Okay. Any more questions on the water and sewer? Is there any more on the sewer part of it? Yeah, let's go to the sewer part.
So happy I got to ask my question again.
The SACWA tentative rate increase is 3%. And also in the Water Maintenance Cost Center, there's $500,000 budgeted for private water lead related work. And, that's something prior to 2 years ago we did not have in this budget. So that 4% increase is partially due to this as well. $200,000 is budgeted for service line material verification. It's required under the SACWA contract, and $75,000 is budgeted for an aerial flyover of the city for stormwater mapping.
Oh, I guess Commissioner Macy.
So, we may not be doing that stormwater mapping, right?
Correct, yeah, it's just a placeholder in case we decide to move forward with utility. We have it in the budget, so I just keep pushing it each year.
Okay. And then Commissioner Dubak already asked this question, but I had planned to ask it here, so I'm just going to check on this. So the lead water replacement, lead line replacement, I had really hoped that some of the infrastructure money would trickle down for that. We're not looking to see any of that?
Or state money.
I think we're spending part of that 1.3, right?
That's our
Replacement?
No,
That's ARPA.
that's for the Stevenson Highway. No,
Not this year.
I may be mistaken, but as far as applications to apply to the state is not available at this time, but
Okay.
let me.
It just seemed like that was something, there was a big bump, but there was a big pile of money that was
Oh,
coming out.
there is.
Yeah.
You're asking a good question. So, right, we shouldn't spend that on ARPA if we can get that from the state.
Yeah.
That's my question.
Those are your questions?
And then page 354, sewer maintenance. Oakland County Water Resources Commission is tentatively scheduling a 3.8% increase for sewer disposal costs. That's combined storm and sanitary. And miscellaneous contracted services includes $588,000 for sewer televising and root control work, and then $12,000 for a controlled burn of the rain gardens.
I just want to see one of those burns. That's
I
pretty
want to go
cool.
watch a burn.
Yeah.
Call some
So
burns happened.
we put it out to bid and we got no bidders.
I'll do it.
And I got some
I like
feedback. Well, people they were like, your gardens are too small. Like, we shouldn't be burning stuff unless we have like a full, like an acre or something to burn. They're like, this isn't worth my time. I'm not going to bid on this.
I got matches.
Yeah, I don't, and plus, like, our Worry Free does like insane maintenance of these. I mean,
Yeah,
they
they do.
are beautiful every fall when they cut everything down, so there's nothing to burn. Anyway, so
Okay.
I think that's going to come out next year in the CIP.
Thanks.
Okay, and then page 356 has a list of capital projects amounting to nearly $5.7 million. And then, again, on the Stevenson water main of 1.7 million, 1.3 will be funded with ARPA monies. 1.3 million.
I have a question.
Yes.
What part of Normandy is this going to cover? Normandy Road resurfacing? I know that on the west side of Woodward, it's all done, but
Yes, I think it's Delamere Court to Crooks, I believe, because we're doing the road, like a mile-long segment of the road, but we still need to finish the water main from Delamere Court over to Crooks.
So we're by the park.
okay. Okay, thanks.
And I think we've talked about this in the past. We're talking about like maybe some pedestrian islands in the center there.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah, we
so
have that out
perfect.
with the consultant right now to design, and
That's
that's one
awesome.
of the objectives.
Cool.
Coolidge to Crooks, is that? Yeah, Coolidge to Crooks is the Normandy Road. Oh wait, I'm Coolidge. Delamere to Crooks.
Is
So-
the water.
Yeah, is the water main portion. Okay, we're ready to move to Ice Arena, that's page 359. And revenues from leagues and tournaments is increasing 25,000 due to not having as many adult leagues return during the pandemic. So they're expecting an uptick now. People are starting to come out. Drop in hockey as well, increasing 10,000. With the expectation that participants will continue to increase in the upcoming year. Freestyle skating revenue increasing 20,000, and that's due to an increase in activity that they've already seen in the current fiscal year. So they're anticipating that will continue, that trend will continue. Expenditures, contracted worker services increasing 40,000 to accommodate wage increases for the Learn to Skate staff, maintenance, and the front and desk staff. They're requesting $135,000 for the modular roof section of the building restoration, and then bathroom partitions for $10,000.
Ms. Rudd, I have a really dumb financial question here, and it sounds kind of sneaky, but if through ARPA or whatever we were to put, because this place consumes a lot of electricity, right? For the ice, to keep the ice and all that. If we were to put solar panels all over there, we use like a funding source, let's say ARPA makes solar panels eligible. Would that, instead of reducing, because this is an enterprise fund, right, the ice arena? And I mean, we can reduce our electricity bill a little bit. Could we have, like we do like for the motor fleets and all of that stuff, could we have this building pay like the city as a utility for the solar panels for the electricity they generate or anything like that? You get what I'm saying?
Possibly, yeah. I think that's something to look into.
Okay.
I think.
It's all the mayor needed.
Just, you know, just an idea.
We've had transfers out of some of our enterprise funds before.
Okay, because I know we do that all the time. Yeah.
One in particular, these two. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just planting the seed there, Cole.
Okay, and then page 360. I have removed depreciation out again here, so you can kind of see true revenues and expenditures, and the use of fund balance will occur in the budget for 22-23. And then here, it looks like they'll be making a little bit of money to stash away for more improvements to the building, because there are always, seems to be needed.
For such a simple structure, it does always have an issue.
They put a partial roof on in 2021,
Really recently.
and it was $1 million
Yeah.
for part of a roof. Yeah. So, and
Nice
it's an old
cost less.
building too, so, a lot of needs there. Internal service funds, are we ready for that? All right. IT, page 366. We had some unfilled positions in this department, and an unfilled security analyst that we've never had filled yet. Haven't been able to recruit. And then we had PC support specialists move over to the fire department for earlier in the year. So personnel costs are going up because we're anticipating those positions be filled. There is someone retiring early in the fiscal year, so we did a partial overlap for a couple months. We budgeted that. Years ago, we were anticipating that retirement, and we were budgeting it, and then they told us they weren't going to retire, so we stopped budgeting that overlap. And we were doing like a 4 to 6 months, but we've got a few month overlap here. To have 2 network administrators just for succession planning, and I believe they are going to retire in late summer, early fall. So. And then additional telephone services has really skyrocketed here because what we did is if you read some of the nitty gritty and the significant notes for the various departments, we removed their telephone budgets and we allocated them all to the IT department for basically administrative purposes to make that a little more efficient. And then they're requesting $60,000 for GIS integration, $50,000 for server network cabling infrastructure, and then office software and training, $48,000.
Quick question, Ms. Rudd, on that too. Is there any discussion here? I know we had in the past, but maybe I missed it in the PC support. Like, the risk of cyber attacks and things of that nature, I mean, are probably more likely than they've ever been before. I guess maybe this might be a suggestion. I don't know that we need to change the budget, but I don't know that I see enough in there that we're spending to prevent such a issue. And I would think that maybe ask the city manager what his thoughts are on that, and if you're having a special meeting and maybe there's, I'm just saying, but from personal experience, I think it might be worth looking at and confirming that we're well protected against not just ransomware, but other malicious activities that could be part of a new cyber tit-for-tat conflict that is probably going to take place over the next 10 years.
Oh, that would be worthwhile. One thing that we have through a contractor is to test our workforce, which includes even all of you, is to see if someone falls for a phishing scam. And I get reports of individuals that click on something that says, I'm busy now in a meeting. I need your help. Click here.
Oh, is this the ones where people keep saying like, here's a gift card for Mayor Fournier, and I'm like, no.
I want the gift card back, by the way.
So there's an outside vendor that we're using who's helping us with that, and but that human interface is part of that as well in education. That we don't.
But there's also
expose
a system
ourselves
architecture too of closed networks now versus, open networks. What has to be open, what can be closed, what do the firewalls look like, who's maintaining those firewalls,
Oh, and it's a combination of things, but I'm just illustrating that as an example.
Yeah,
of
I'd like
something
to-
we're actively doing.
I mean, I know this is a budget discussion, but I'd like to
Right.
look into that a little bit more because I don't even know that we have insurance against ransomware, do we?
The MMR may provide some
Okay.
coverage.
But they negotiate with the,
No, they're just
ransomware?
self-insuring it right now. They're having a really hard time finding commercial coverage at the higher level. They're self-insuring like 1 to 2 million, and they're just the commercial coverage. They're just not really interested right now, so they are struggling to
nobody.
to find that next layer of
Because once they know
commercial
what that
coverage.
is, then the ransomware people will settle for more above that, you know what I mean? And then you pay your $1 million or your whole system crashes, and they will crash the system, and you'll lose everything. Records, we've digitalized everything from or we work on backup, you know what I mean? Where we have a completely, you know what I mean, separate, and we may be doing these things, but I think it's money well spent, because, especially in the PD, fire department, even records here, I mean, it's, we're talking about people's livelihood. So, and that's only coming up because I think, just maybe my private work life, everybody's preparing for the worst, I think, coming up. Mr. Colo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and that's a great idea there. So I have 2 questions here. The first one is just about the computers that we're buying. I would strongly urge that we start buying more laptops than desktops. I know I heard during the pandemic, people just, even internally, were having a hard time logging into our VPN if they didn't have not being at their desktop was detrimental to them. So I hope that, this isn't quite the 90s anymore. A laptop is as powerful, if not more powerful, than a desktop. And I think we probably need to make sure that our staff is agile and able to pick up and go if needed, and get out City Hall. Also,
go ahead.
Tell me why laptops are bad.
No, I was just saying that then you need a VPN service to go with it.
Exactly. All right. Yeah. And then, so this is similar to the question that you answered about the police station earlier, about the performance maintenance over there, but I see server network cabling infrastructure. And once again, it's a brand new IT room. All the network and cabling infrastructure is put in about a year ago. So I guess I would just wonder what a $50,000 contract for that would look like.
I'm sorry, help me out. What paragraph are you reading?
Look at
Down.
366.
Right here.
Okay, all right.
That's a $50,000. Sure, there's going to be some maintenance there, right? There's server maintenance always. That's ongoing. But infrastructure
It
implies
could
that.
be at another building,
Yeah.
because, right, this all goes through
Yeah.
IT. so it
Yeah,
could be at
senior
another building.
center, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, correct. Now that you mentioned that is starting to sound familiar. That there's some vulnerabilities. Don't quote me on that, but at the senior center, that there is an issue there. But I'll check on that for sure. So I don't believe it's for this building.
Okay. And then I think, has Wi-Fi been restored to the senior center? If that's the case, if not, does this lead to Wi-Fi restoration at the senior center?
Couldn't tell you.
Okay.
Motor pool. Behind the Bobcat, I thought we were banning those in an ordinance. Just kidding.
Just license it first and make sure it's safe.
Okay, page 371, on the revenue side, as mentioned a little bit earlier or today, sorry, there's a catch-up that we're resuming, and that is the $408,000 that we're adding to depreciation annually for 10 years to get us up to the $4 million that we think that we're behind on having in the fund for the future replacements of the fleet. And we had a vacation due to the COVID pandemic, so we're back on track now. And this will be the 4th year of the 10-year plan, so it was suspended for 1 year. So we started 5 years ago. On the expenditure side, gasoline line item or fuel is increasing $100,000 due to the anticipated increased costs due to the gallon rate changing. Contracted worker services is increasing $75,000 to perform a DPS facility usage study. And miscellaneous building and repairs is increasing $26,000 for due care monitoring related to site closure. And capital projects includes $50,000 to install dedicated charging infrastructure in preparation of converting some of the city vehicle fleet to full electric vehicles, and that was a carryover from the current year's budget. And $150,000 is budgeted for the small refuse compactor truck that we talked about in the solid waste fund. And then that is a new vehicle, not a replacement vehicle. And then down here are the replacement vehicles that we've been collecting depreciation on. And we're going to pay with cash as opposed to bonding. The fire department's aerial truck, $1.7 million, the Bobcat, a mixer, a trailer for parks and forestry, and then 3 cars for the police department, 2 SUVs, and 1 truck.
Mr. Colo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we passed our climate action plan a couple weeks ago, and we've talked a lot about electric vehicles. And my time here and before that, there's been a lot of talk about electric vehicles. I see we're once again budgeting $50,000, a carryover project from last year that hasn't been completed yet. I would like to see at least one of these police department vehicles be electric. And I don't think that's a lot to ask here. There's, there's 6 cars here. I think one of them, there's a truck, 3 cars, NYC made news a little while ago. They used Ford Mustangs as their SUV, the new electric ones. So I would, if you could pick one of these, maybe not pursuit vehicles, maybe these, administrative vehicles, and turn one into electric, or even a plug-in electric. But I think it's fair that we start making it, this is our priority, so this is how we do it.
I'll just, I'll give you a little bit of insight. I think that's a good goal. I think the challenge that they might have is, like, for example, trucks. Next year, you might not even, you can't even get a Ford Lightning. You can't get a Mach-E. So I think availability might be a little bit of an issue. And for the police and scepter types, they might have limited selection, if any at all. But I do think that's something we need to ask those questions and vet that out and ask why, when they come to put their purchases in front of us, why they're not EV. There needs to be a really good answer. And can we get creative, to Commissioner Colo's point? You can put somebody in the back of a Mach-E just as much as you can put somebody. It's not your entire fleet. It's just one, maybe it's something to, I think it's something we need to have solid answers why. But again, personal, vocational stuff that I'm involved in, it's hard to get these things.
Well, we're also depreciating these vehicles, right? So we could at least say that this one, the money going towards this one will be an electric, and then put in that purchase order and see when they fulfill it. And we don't have to get rid of a vehicle necessarily right away. we could keep it for that next year, depending on the use. There's a case here, but I think we could at least make the purchase order now, this year, and if it's not funded until next year, that's fine, but at least make it clear, this year we will purchase, maybe they can't fulfill it, but we will purchase an electric vehicle.
Or they know that they have to replace they have to get a truck next year, an SUV next year, and they put the order in one for that year, and then this year, we just know that the next one is going to be the one.
So before we even consider purchasing a vehicle, we store all of them within the police station. There are no charging stations. I've spoken to the chief about that let's get the charging station in there before we get ahead of ourselves, because otherwise it becomes a logistical issue of having to park a car. It's easy to put that, we've talked about in City Hall here on the west lot, south lot, excuse me, that there is a direct electrical connection, but you are talking about, ripping up an enclosed building to have a charging station.
Or down the side, people add them to their homes all the time, right?
So, but the vehicles are parked indoors. But anyways, not to get too bogged down into the details, but I have had that conversation. But there are supply chain issues to say that, as the mayor mentioned, that if we're to want to get a pickup truck, they're not available. So,
but then you have to order now, right?
You have one more issue we have to look at too that we need an answer for. My understanding is that most of these cars are used all 3 shifts. They're hot seating the cars. So you don't always have downtime to charge them, but
correct.
We need to. This is where we spend most of our police fleet. Is where we spend most of our miles on the road, and I think we really need to push to understand, what the trade-offs are, and make that judgment call. Like it would be with each one of these, we need to understand what the electric option is. Not why we can't do it, but here's the electric version, and here's the thing, and here's what it would take to do electric, and here's what it would take to do gas.
Yeah, so I would say that, I'm sorry, just to finish that thought, let's investigate that, and I've had that preliminary conversation, just to let you know, so.
Sure. I'm all for conversion to electric. I feel like now with the SCAP in place, we're going to be moving forward strategically on some of these things. Like buying one vehicle feels like performative. I want staff to bring us an executable plan on how we're going to fully convert to an electric vehicle fleet. Yeah. So I don't want to micromanage like one purchase to make myself feel good. I want to
then stop buying vehicles.
A plan to do it.
Yeah.
And I'll be looking forward to seeing that in the coming year.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Prush?
My recollection is that when you talk about purchasing police vehicles especially, that there was used to be only one manufacturer that did that. I think now it's Ford, because there are special components within the actual framework of the vehicle itself which are so unique, and not all manufacturers do it. It's special suspension, it's special braking systems, it's a whole lot of special stuff in the car itself. So it would be interesting to know whether or not they're even building electric versions of the police vehicles that they're selling. I don't know that they are yet. So it's not like you can take a standard automobile that is electric and then say, okay, we're going to use it for police purposes. I don't think that that's appropriate, because the vehicles themselves are constructed in such a way to be used specifically for police services in just the way that they're built. And the components that go into them, the basic components that go into them, suspension and braking and all of that basic stuff, transmission stuff, it's specialized to that. And I don't know that they're even producing electric vehicles for that purposes yet. But we should look into it.
Yeah. And maybe we start with the next building inspection cars and assessing cars, and then, we get. But I think Commissioner Prush is right. There is going to be. I just see EVs. Nobody wants to make police inceptors. It's just not a good business model for any OEM, and that's why you see most of them getting out of it. But it'll probably be the last thing they electrify, to be honest. But if you got like a Tahoe or something like that, or a truck, the inceptors are different, then those modifications like to your chassis and everything like that will probably get some demand, but the premium will be on there. But, that's our SCAP. We know it's going to cost a little more up front, right? But we'll save on gas. Sorry. Shouldn't speculate. We should just get a plan. So we're done with the MOPO, and we're over to other.
I have another. Not a specific, well, kind of a specific section. I noticed in a couple sections here, so speaking of solar, says city office building electric is increasing $3,000 based on rate increases, is how it's explained. And then 2,000 electric utility increase at the courthouse, 14,000 street lighting, 10,000 for a street fund, all because of rate increases is my understanding of how it's explained in each of these. I note no corresponding increase for police station, fire station, animal shelter, or senior center. Is there, I would assume if rates are going up, they're going up across all our buildings?
No, it's basically how the department head completes their budget. So if they feel like the rates are going to go up or their budget needs to be increased, that's their request.
Huh. But the rate we pay is standard, I assume, across all of our buildings, or is it do different buildings pay different rates?
Yes, some buildings that go through the MMRMA, which is like electric choice.
Okay.
On some of our buildings.
Okay.
So I would say maybe 6 or 7 of them are through electric choice.
Okay, so there might not necessarily be standard rates across from building to building, just being billed by DT or something. Gotcha. Okay. So, really pleased to see that our, $411,000 request has been put forward by Gary Peters. Hopefully the senator and the committee will see that through. That would put 160 kilowatts of solar and 120 of battery into the farmer's market. What I'm wondering is, if we're looking at a $3,000 a year increase for this building, is it time to at least get an assessment on whether or not, as part of that purchase, we expand that contract to put solar on this building and finance it, and then use the savings to pay out the financing and get this building off the grid, 80% off the grid.
I would say every city building. We should.
I would love to see every city building, but I know we've got this contract coming. If we get that money, we have a chance to make a really big purchase and include this building in that purchase, because we're on the same site, right? It's right across the street.
Yeah.
And if this building's already looking at a $3,000 a year increase, I think the chances that if we had to finance it, it's going to be immediately cash flow positive.
So it's the core of the PD.
I would love for us to explore that as part of this budget, to see if we can make those transitions in the coming year.
Okay.
Is that something we can consider?
We will explore that, so.
All right, thank you.
I mean, my vision, just to let you know, would be that we have solar panels and battery backup in every city building. Like when I look at the Salter Center, I mean, this is an opportunity, especially if we have grants and funding and everything for it. That's the way to go, because electricity prices are going to be going up. Inflation goes up, electricity goes up. Now, all of a sudden, you put these in, and they pay you back for 20, 25 years cash flow.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, you're talking, what you could fund, would be amazing. So, ARPA, Peter's money, grants, matches, economies of scale, however we got to do it. And it meets our SCAP goals, or helps meet our SCAP goals. I think it's just a no-brainer, in my opinion. Sweet. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah. I won't burden the team.
Well, we're just throwing stuff out there.
Melanie's going to burden the team.
Well, so I had this conversation with Mr. Brake offline, online, I guess, maybe yesterday or the day before, about, so we're sending an election letter out regarding the November ballot and the millages we're putting on that, but there's no plans to put anything out about the August ballot that has the library millage on it. And I guess I don't feel comfortable with, the city isn't supposed to be promoting or advocating for a position on these ballot initiatives. We're sending out informational letters, but it feels a lot like we're picking and choosing if we don't send it out on every single one we get. And I don't know that it necessarily has to be a letter. But I was like, well, didn't we have that in the budget? And we do, but we only have one letter in the budget. And it feels to me that if we're having this millage, which losing the library millage would be a lot bigger deal than not getting an additional millage for the parks. So it feels important to me.
I just agree with you. Like, if you're gonna, it's not advocating, but if you're gonna inform the electorate, you should probably do it on anything at any time when the city has something on it. But, Mr. Brake?
So I said that we're going to make both of those possible.
Okay, all right, so. but
That's
did
what I
we need to
emailed
put-
you and stating, we'll have to make a budget amendment, and so,
Okay, so that was not totally clear to me that that's what you were.
no, I made it real clear that all of them are important, so. But what I was saying, what I was stating is that I think it would be a little too early to advocate for the November ballot issues in with the August letter. They really need to be
Well,
separate
so that's what I was
mailings.
confused about, because it made it, when you said that, it sounded to me like, so we can't send it, we only have one
No,
letter, and we can't send it out now because it's too early.
I apologize if I didn't make that clear. I said all proposals are important, and so we need to do separate letters
Okay.
and make that
Right.
timely for, in relation to the election. So,
Okay, great.
yeah.
Anything else? All right, so maybe, Mr. Brake, Ms. Rudd, you can kind of, we do this once a year, should be in memory by now, but remind us what's next. I mean, one, I think we have to decide if we're going to have a third meeting or not. And then I think, then we have a schedule, depending on that at our June, is it?
June 13th.
June
So-
13th, okay.
So the way the calendar falls, it's, we have an extra week in between, but that will be the next city commission meeting. And from my understanding, we'll have information on the road millage and hopefully the other millage proposal that I spoke to you on Monday, of having some proposed language as well on those items. So that's what's coming up next on the budget calendar. So if you wish to have another meeting, it's a matter of getting your calendars out. But if I don't hear, if there's individual questions, email me and we'll field those and go from there.
So like minor things that change between what we looked at here and June 13th, do we get that summarized somehow? I mean, I know, we heard from Commissioner Colo tonight that the CDBG stuff was changed quite a bit, and like these little tweaks maybe.
That's the only change that I've heard of. All the questions that I'm listing out here, are questions that you were asking to clarify, what's in the budget document. Keep in mind that a budget is a living document. So as we get into the year, for instance, as we acquire grants, that we make budget amendments. Also, as I described before, we've talked about ARPA, that we'll be covering that. That'll be a whole separate discussion that'll be coming up through the summer and the fall, that as we implement specific programs and then make amendments to the budget at that time. So, to my knowledge, that other than the CDBG, there hasn't been any specific sort of adjustments, but Ms. Rudd can correct me if I'm wrong.
We could put the $50,000 for the state construction code CRM system consultant. We could add that to what you see on the 13th, rather than an amendment.
Yeah, and we had a
could do that.
similar
Is
sort
50 enough for
of plan. Yeah, I'm wondering that too. Because I got a proposal once. We'll adjust that.
Yeah, get your best estimate. I'm
Yes.
throwing it out there saying, hey, it's not 11 million, but it's probably in the low 50 for the consulting, maybe 200 for everything boiled in. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
budget, so you put 200 in, you don't use it, it goes back in the pot.
Right.
You guys can make the best
Yeah,
determination.
yeah. And I received a consultant, so it was a little bit different context, but nevertheless, I have to go back through past emails and to bring that back up and just put an inflationary sort of increase on that. So
Yeah, we want to look at the service model, because that service model there is going to be, there's going to be a proxy for every other thing we do.
right. So
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, unless everyone's satisfied, I just feel like, we've had a couple weeks to review the budget, we've had our walkthrough, asked some questions, had some conversation. I just don't want anyone to kind of think on it and stew on something, then show up at the meeting we're supposed to pass the budget, throw an issue out there that deadlocks us again, then we're in another budget crisis. I'm wondering if it wouldn't be in our best interest to have this on the calendar, plan to have that meeting. So there's one last meeting. If somebody, in thinking through our conversation and continuing to look through the budget, has an idea they want to bring forward, we can do it before we're down to the wire. And commissioners don't feel like, they're in a pinch, like, oh, no, you had your chance to have ideas, that's off the table now. So I think it's best that we schedule it, and then, if you want to take a straw poll Mr. Brick, a week or so before, like, do we need to have this meeting? We could consider taking it off the books.
Okay. All right, so
Or a
with
few
that
days
being
before.
said, it seems like Mondays are really the best days, so we don't run into conflicts. I mean, there is June 6th.
Does anyone know when Commissioner Douglas gets back?
She will be back by then.
I think she comes back on the 6th,
Oh, on the
because that's
6th.
my commission for senior services aging place, and she said she was
Oh,
coming
okay,
back. So I
all
think
right.
she comes
See,
back.
I mean,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
if we're going to do the third one, might as well give her
Yeah,
a chance.
so I guess perhaps with Commissioner Dubuck's suggestion, we'll just have to send out a poll and see what your availability is. So,
I'm majorly in favor of at least having the option of a third meeting, because it feels every year like we go through this and are told what it is, and there's no chance for us to really have much input. Like it just, we ask questions, and then whether or not we get the answers, maybe that impacts how we feel about what happens in here. And yes, this budget is presented pretty much as a fait accompli, and it would be nice if we had some chance to give some input.
okay.
Commissioner Colo?
I would say too, one thing that we didn't talk a lot about are the budget policies, and a lot of these have been standing since 2004, 5, and just maybe some context behind them. Are they still all necessary? Are there revisions to them? I think, and if not necessarily this next meeting, but just something to put on the radar, Mr. Bragg, is that I'd like to review them and make sure that they're still pertinent today as they were when they were adopted.
So that's part of the resolution that reaffirms the policy that was covered, albeit it was early on Monday when we went over that. So there's a slight change on the purchasing, but review that part of the document.
No,
And so-
I know. I'm just saying
We-
that these policies have. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, they were just from 2004. We did have a huge, with Commissioner Macy and Commissioner Lavasser, maybe 2 years ago?
No, it was my first year, it was 2017,
Yeah, I was going to say
17,
predates
3.5
me,
years, 3 years
so-
ago?
5 years ago.
5 years ago? Right.
Probably.
You just don't age, Commissioner Macy.
Yeah,
It's
must
hard
be
to,
it.
So yeah, but I mean, they could be looked at again. I guess they're
Mhm.
5 years old. Just
Just the one was looked at
Years
5 years
blend.
ago.
It was just the fund balance policy.
Just
that's
the
looked
fund
at.
balance policy 5 years ago.
There's many other policies, and a new commission, new administration. So it just to like look at if these are still relevant in today's age.
It does seem like the next budget meeting would be the good place for that if there were such questions.
okay. All right. So, not any other business. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Commissioner DeBuck. For a second by Commissioner Perush. Discussion? None. Call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Adjourn.